Chapter 952. Jian Zhanxian. The name sounded arrogant and domineering, but Chu Fengmian knew it well. Behind this name, there was an even deeper origin. Unsurprisingly, the sword-slaying immortal had also come to participate in the Nine Realms Genius Battle. Chu Fengmian would never underestimate any opponent. Moreover, the sword immortal before him was enough to make Chu Fengmian take him seriously. Gu Jin recovered from her shock when she heard Chu Fengmian calling out to Jian Zhanxian. It seemed that even she was extremely shocked by the appearance of the celestial slaying sword. After calming herself down, she explained, Jian Zhanxian is a rare genius in the Tian Jian sect. He joined the Tian Jian sect when he was young and won the first place on the list of top 100 talents when he was 15. He entered the Destiny realm when he was 40 and became an emperor. He even won the 7th place in the Nine Regions Genius Battle. He didn't participate in the next 2 competitions. It's said that he's now the top disciple in the Tian Jian sect and is being groomed to be the next sect master of the Tian Jian sect. I didn't expect him to be here this time. Jian Zhanxian hadn't participated in the Nine Regions Genius Battle for the past 2 years. Chu Fengmian didn't expect him to show up every time. He inherited the title of Immortal Slayer at such a young age. It seems that this guy is indeed a sword genius. Chu Fengmian thought to himself after hearing Gu Jin's words. Becoming an emperor at the age of 40 was an incredible speed. For martial artists, those who could surpass life and death and become patriarchs before the age of 100 were considered geniuses. As for becoming an emperor, they were even more geniuses. Jian Zhanxian did all this at the age of 40. 20 years had passed. Jian Zhanxian's realm hadn't changed, but his strength had become much more terrifying. Even such a genius has appeared. It seems that there's something hidden behind the Nine Regions Genius Battle. Chu Fengmian had a guess when he heard from Luo Shi that the Demon Emperor would also participate in the Nine Regions Genius Battle. This time, the Nine Regions Genius Battle would definitely be different from the past. Jian Zhanxian's appearance made Chu Fengmian even more convinced of his previous conjecture. Senior brother immortal slaying, your appearance this time has caused quite a stir. Sitting next to Jian Zhanxian, several disciples of the Tian Jian sect were laughing and chatting, discussing everyone's surprise. Jian Zhanxian hadn't appeared in 20 years. Originally, everyone thought that he had lost interest in the Nine Regions Genius Battle. It's just a boring discussion. My goal is to win the championship. Sword-slaying immortal's gaze was cold. His eyes were as sharp as swords. It was as if he didn't care about anything other than the sword Dao. With senior brother immortal slaying taking the field, the championship will definitely belong to you this time. Several Tian Jian sect disciples beside him hurriedly tried to flatter him. The discussion about Jian Zhanxian's appearance in the ancient fighting ground had yet to fade away. From afar, another figure flew over. No, it was more accurate to say that the figure walked over. It was another young man. He walked in the air as if he were walking on flat ground. Waves of spiritual power condensed under his feet to form a unique path. Wherever he went, the path would extend to wherever he went. Huang Wu, it's him? He's here too? What's going on? Why did the Nine Regions Genius Battle attract so many monstrous geniuses? Huang Wu's appearance shocked the surrounding cultivators. It was no less shocking than Jian Zhanxian's appearance. Huang Wu is the young master of the desolate ancient sect. His status is much more precious than most of the patriarchs. He hasn't participated in the Nine Regions Genius Battle for 3 consecutive years. Why is he here this time? Gu Jin asked in surprise beside Chu Fengmian. More and more unexpected characters were arriving. Sword Immortal Slayer, Desolate. These were all characters who had been famous for a long time. Although they weren't even 100 years old, they were still qualified to participate in the Nine Regions Genius Battle. However, they had all obtained decent rankings in the Nine Regions Geniuses Battle. They had already obtained extremely high statuses. Logically speaking, they shouldn't have taken the Nine Regions Genius Battle seriously. However, they were all here this time. When Sword Immortal saw Desolate Void, he raised his head and glanced at him. There was no surprise in his eyes, only battle intent. Interesting. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile. If the Nine Regions genius battle was as calm as before, it wouldn't be interesting. These hidden experts had all appeared. This was the true Nine Regions geniuses battle. What's going on? Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, why are they here? Many of the spectating warriors in the ancient fighting ring felt that something was amiss. If Jian Zhanxian had appeared alone, it could be that he was bored and came to participate. This could be considered a reason. However, even Huang Wu had appeared. This was unusual. Moreover, not everyone had arrived yet. There were still some empty seats in the seats of the 7 great sections. This proved that there were still people who hadn't arrived. Brother Zhanxian, Brother Huang Wu, you're early. A loud and small voice suddenly rang out in the air, and another figure appeared. Compared to Jian Zhanxian and Huang Wu, this person seemed much calmer. However, when they saw the purple light enveloping him, no one dared to underestimate him. Gongsun Tianjue, that fierce person is here, too. The moment Gongsun Tianjue landed, everyone present could feel a ferocious aura. It was as if they were being stared at by a hungry wolf. This is the divine body of heaven's end. Chu Fengyan sized up Gongsun Tianjue. He also felt as if he was being stared at by a lone wolf. The divine body of heaven's end was ranked 8th among the top 10 innate divine bodies. It was one of the most terrifying innate divine bodies. Chu Fengyan had killed Yi Tianjun, the holy son of Beimeng Academy. He had the chaos divine body, which was also a terrifying constitution. However, it was only ranked 10th among the innate divine bodies. It barely squeezed into the top 10. The divine body of heaven's end was ranked 8th. It was even stronger than the chaos divine body. The stronger a cultivator with an innate divine body was, the more terrifying the innate divine body's power would be. Gongsun Tianjue had already stepped into the heavenly mandate realm. As an emperor, he could use his divine body of heaven's end freely. Chapter 953. After the appearance of 3 monstrous geniuses, the crowd's reaction was no longer as intense as before. Some of the more observant ones could already tell that this year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament was extraordinary. Gongsun Tianjue wouldn't be the last. As expected, not long after, a few more figures appeared one after another. A young man in a long robe descended from the sky. At a glance, this young man didn't look like a martial artist, but more like an alchemist. Beside him, Gu Jin had already told Chu Fengyan the young man's identity. Yao Zhe, the young master of Medicine King Valley. Like Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, and Gongsun Tianjue, they were all geniuses of their generation, the cream of the crop. Next, those from Sage Monarch Sect, Alpha Hall, and 9 Demon City should be arriving. Chu Fengyan muttered to himself. Before he could finish his sentence, another 3 figures descended from the sky. The tallest of them was Wu Hongtian from Sage Monarch Sect. His muscles bulged, and he was a typical disciple of Sage Monarch Sect. Beside Wu Hongtian was a young woman. This caused Chu Fengyan to be surprised. The strongest of this generation of Alpha Hall was a woman. She wore a robe made of stars, which made her look mysterious. Alpha Hall had always been a symbol of mystery. It was the mysterious path of astronomical phenomena. Even Chu Fengyan didn't know much about Alpha Hall. However, no one dared to question the strength of Alpha Hall. Alpha Hall's Xing Xianxing is said to be the most beautiful woman in the 9 regions. Gu Jin, who was sitting beside Chu Fengyan, suddenly said with a smile, "I wonder if you're interested in her, the most beautiful woman in the 9 regions?" Chu Fengyan smiled when he heard this. He didn't know how much this title had to do with Xing Xuanqing's identity. After all, she was the only woman in the younger generation. However, Gu Jin's words made Chu Fengyan feel a little better. To be called the most beautiful woman in the 9 regions, what did Xing Xianxing look like? Quietly, Chu Fengyan activated his spiritual consciousness and approached Xing Xianxing, wanting to see her true appearance behind her robe. However, Chu Fengyan's spiritual consciousness was devoured by her robe. Even with Chu Fengyan's spiritual sense, he couldn't see through Xing Xuanqing's robe. "You have some skills." Chu Fengyan tried several times, but to no avail. Only then did he slowly withdraw his spirit sense. The techniques of Dubby Hall indeed had some tricks up their sleeves. Even Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense couldn't see through them. If there was a chance in the future, Chu Fengmian really wanted to see Xing Xuanqing's true face. As long as Chu Fengmian fought with her, there might be a chance. Chu Fengmian didn't want to stir up trouble with so many people around. His gaze once again landed on the last figure. The last person was a genius from the Nine-Demon City. He was a man in a black robe. Although his face could not be seen clearly, he was surrounded by a terrifying demonic aura. This demonic will cause many warriors to frown. Although Nine-Demon City was one of the 7 great sects, most of the cultivators who cultivated demonic art stayed in Nine-Demon City and avoided it. Mo's Sky Splitter, it really is him. The Demon Emperor rebelled and left. He's the only one in Nine-Demon City who can take on this responsibility. The most outstanding person among the younger generation in Nine-Demon City wasn't Mo's Sky Splitter, but the Demon Emperor. However, everyone in the 9 regions knew that the Demon Emperor had left Nine-Demon City and joined the 6 Demon Gates. The 6 Demon Gates were becoming more and more active in the 9 regions. There were already rumors that the 6 Demon Gates would become the 8th great sect in the 9 regions. When Mo Sky Splitter heard the discussion about the Demon Emperor, his eyes turned gloomy. The Demon Emperor's rebellion was a huge mess that Nine-Demon City had never experienced in the past 10,000 years. Nine-Demon City's strength was enough to be ranked first among the 7 great sections. But now, it was only around the corner. It could be seen how many people the Demon Emperor had taken away from Nine-Demon City. The people from the 7 great sects are all here. Who else will come? Do you think the Demon Emperor will come? A series of discussions took place all of a sudden. The most famous cultivator of the younger generation in the 9 regions was none other than the Demon Emperor. The news of Chu Fengmian killing countless disciples of the 7 great sects in the Sinkhole Celestial Land had spread throughout the 9 realms and was a hot topic of discussion. But when it came to the 9 regions' monstrous geniuses, the first person that came to mind was the Demon Emperor. He used to be the strongest person in Nine-Demon City and was said to be the leader of the demonic path. No one knew his real name. Everyone called him Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor represented his identity. The Demon Emperor leaving Nine-Demon City and inheriting the 6 Demon Gates was a huge matter that shook the 9 regions. Many people were looking forward to the Demon Emperor's participation in the 9 regions' genius battle. They wanted to see if the Demon Emperor could show his true face. Ha ha! So many people want to see me? In the midst of the discussion, a burst of arrogant laughter descended from the sky. That voice was extremely arrogant. Even before that person arrived, everyone could tell that the person who spoke was an extremely arrogant person. There was only one person in the world who could do that. The Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor is really here. Countless people looked up at the sky, wanting to see the Demon Emperor's true face. The first person to descend from the sky was an extremely handsome man, the Demon Emperor. Based on his appearance alone, no one would have imagined that this handsome man was the Demon Emperor who had stirred up a storm in the 9 regions. Beside the Demon Emperor, there were also 4 people who had descended together with him. These 4 people, 1 male and 1 female, followed beside the Demon Emperor. The 2 of them were rulers of the Fate Realm. Moreover, Chu Fengmian looked over and saw that they were only in their early 30s, and they looked like they were only in their 20s. 2 emperors in their early 30s. So young. Who are these 2? I've never heard of them. It said that the 6 Demon Gates have 6 Supremes who are extremely young emperors. These 2 must be, how terrifying. They're only in their early 30s, but they're already emperors. How can such people be willing to work for the Demon Emperor? No, look at those 2 old men. Behind the man and woman were 2 aged old men. Although the 2 old men had concealed their auras, they were able to sense the auras of the 2 old men. Although their auras were concealed, if one looked closely, they would feel a sense of terror. Chapter 954. Immortal Realm. Ancestor Wu. It was unknown who was the first to speak, breaking the silence of the ancient fighting ring. The 2 elders standing beside the Demon Emperor were Ancestor Wu of the Immortal Realm. They were the top figures in the 9 domains. The rise of the Six Paths demonic gates also happened in the past few months. Everyone had doubts about the Six Paths demon sect's strength. However, after seeing the two old men, all of his suspicions were gone. 2. Ancestor Wu Realms. With just the 2 Ancestor Wu Realms, the 6 demon sects were second only to the 7 great sects in the 9 regions. Demon Emperor, what are you doing here? Seeing the arrival of the Demon Emperor, a figure suddenly rushed out of the ancient gladiator arena. It was an elder with a giant sword on his back. It's a mortal Jian Ke. The appearance of the elder caused a commotion. The elder's aura was not weaker than the 2 elders behind the Demon Emperor. He was also an immortal realm Ancestor Wu. The Juk sword, Chu Fumian's gaze followed the direction of immortal Jian Quebec. However, Chu Fumian's gaze was not on immortal Jian Ke, but the giant sword on his back. The giant sword looked simple and unadorned. Layers of inscriptions were engraved on the body of the sword. When all the inscriptions were combined, they faintly formed the words Juk. Damn it! Chu Fumian's eyes were filled with killing intent. The Juk sword was one of the swords of the former master of Sword Principle. It was later given to Chu Fumian's 4th senior brother. He did not expect it to fall into the hands of the Tianjin sect. Young master, Gu Jin, who was sitting beside Chu Fumian, seemed to be shocked by Chu Fumian's killing intent. This was the first time she saw Chu Fumian's killing intent. It was terrifying to the extreme. Even she, who was sitting beside him, could not help but shudder at the murderous intent. I'm fine. Hearing Gu Jin's words, Chu Fumian's killing intent gradually dissipated. No, it should be said that he hid his killing intent. He buried it in the bottom of his heart. Now is not the time for revenge. He could not reveal Chu Fumian's identity. This was the ancient fighting arena, and it was unknown how many experts from the 7 great sects were hidden inside. Once Chu Fumian's identity was exposed, he would definitely be attacked by the crowd. However, there would be a day when Chu Fumian would slaughter the 7 great sections. At that time, he would have to take everything back by himself. Although Chu Fumian's killing intent was shocking, it didn't attract too much attention. The attention of most of the cultivators present was still focused on the sky, on the body of Sage Jian Ke, who had suddenly appeared. Enlightened Jian Ke rushed out. The 2 ancestors of the Six Paths demon sect looked solemn as they stood in front of the Demon Emperor to block him. Don't panic. The Demon Emperor waved his hand and said to the 2 old men. The 2 old men quietly retreated and stood beside the Demon Emperor. Demon Emperor, what are you doing here? Sage Jian Ke said to the Demon Emperor. You killed countless disciples of the Tianjin sect. How dare you come here today? Oh, why wouldn't I dare? Everyone can participate in the 9 regions genius tournament. Why can't I come? The Demon Emperor sneered as he faced venerable Jian Quebec. Also, those useless people of the Tianjin sect are dead. My Six Paths demon sect will dominate the 9 regions again. Those who refuse to submit will all die. The Demon Emperor's words were extremely arrogant, but no one dared to laugh at him after hearing them. The Six Paths demon sect indeed stood at the top of the 9 regions and dominated the 9 regions. Good, good. As expected of the Demon Emperor. You're really arrogant. Another figure soared into the sky from the ancient battleground and stood beside the Demon Monarch, facing him in the air. It was the young sect master of the Tianjin sect, Jian Zhanxian. Elder Jian Ke. Today is the 9 regions genius tournament. It's better not to make a big fuss. Jian Zhanxian spoke casually to Sage Jian Quebec. At the same time, he looked at the Demon Emperor. Demon Emperor, I know why you're here. Since you're here to participate in the 9 regions genius tournament, we'll meet in the arena sooner or later. I'll kill you then. I'll kill you. The words sword immortal slaying sword were heart-wrenching, just like his name. Sword slaying immortals, every action and every word was like a sharp sword, making it impossible for people to withstand. Then I'll wait for you. When the Demon Emperor heard Jian Zhanxian's words, a cold smile appeared on his face, after which his figure landed in the ancient fighting arena. The cultivators of the Six Paths Demon Gate beside him followed the Demon Emperor and descended to the ground. He's the Demon Emperor? He's even more arrogant than the one who started the legendary land. No matter how strong the Demon Emperor is, he's only in the heart-tempering realm. He hasn't even become an emperor yet. How can he fight against Jian Zhanxian? Is he the peak of the younger generation? One of the warriors looked at the realm of the Demon Emperor and asked in a puzzled manner. The Demon Emperor's realm was only in the heart-tempering realm. If he was placed in the younger generation, he would be considered a genius. However, this was only an evaluation of ordinary people. The legendary Demon Emperor was someone who could stand at the peak of the younger generation, like sword-cutting immortal and desolate void. In this case, the heart-tempering realm was indeed somewhat lacking. What do you know? Realm? Don't judge the Demon Emperor's strength by his realm. Upon hearing that martialist's words, another martialist suddenly sneered. Before the Demon Emperor stepped into the life and death realm, his strength was already comparable to an ancestor. When he was in the immortal realm, he killed 2 emperors with his own hands. Do you still think that his realm is too low? It should be said that his current realm has already reached the heart-tempering realm. I'm afraid that he's even more terrifying than the last time he appeared. Life and death realm. Comparable to an ancestor, an immortal realm cultivator killed an emperor? Upon hearing this warrior's words, many warriors in the surrounding crowd exclaimed in surprise. Such a thing would only happen in legends. Who would have thought that it would actually happen? An immortal realm cultivator could kill an emperor. The Demon Emperor's strength couldn't be judged by his realm. Let's see. This year's Demon Emperor does have the ability to compete for the top spot. Chapter 955. The Demon Emperor has broken through so many realms in just half a month. Chu Fumian was a little surprised when he saw the Demon Emperor's realm. Compared to others, Chu Fumian still had some understanding of the Devil Emperor. After all, Chu Fumian had already fought with the Devil Emperor in the Returning Ruins Heaven. At that time, the Demon Emperor was only at the second step of the life and death steps, the immortal realm. In just half a month, the Demon Emperor had already reached the 6th step of the life and death steps, the refining heart realm. In half a month, he had broken through 4 realms. The Demon Emperor is indeed not simple. Chu Fumian sneered. One of his goals in participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was to spar with experts, especially the Demon Emperor. In the Returning Ruins sky, Chu Fumian and the Demon Emperor had yet to decide a winner. Since that was the case, he would decide the winner in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament's arena. Time passed by slowly. After the Demon Emperor, no other martialists were as amazing as the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. In this year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament, there were still some powerhouses that had suddenly appeared. Some of them were members of hidden families, while others were cultivators who had obtained great opportunities. Every time the 9 Regions Genius Battle was held, there would always be some unfamiliar faces appearing. For most of the martialists present, this was no longer a surprise. Most of the martialists who came to watch the 9 Regions Genius Tournament wanted to see what kind of unfamiliar faces would appear in this year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Another 6 hours passed. The gate of the ancient gladiator arena suddenly closed, not allowing any martialists to enter. This meant that the 9 Regions Genius Tournament had officially begun. Boom! From the center of the ancient gladiator arena, a series of roars suddenly resounded. The entire arena underwent an earth-shattering change. A gigantic boulder emerged from the center of the arena. This rock was 12 meters tall, and there were partitions between every meter. The Heaven's Chosen Stone. Chu Fumian was familiar with this rock. It was called the Heaven's Chosen Stone. This Heaven's Chosen Stone was enough to test a martial artist's aptitude. Just like in ancient times, when a major sects recruited disciples, they had to pass through the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Every Heaven's Chosen Stone was divided into 12 layers. Every additional layer lit up represented a higher qualification of the warrior. 1 is the lowest and 12 is the highest. In his previous life, Chu Fumian had also tried the Heaven's Chosen Stone, but at that time, Chu Fumian was simply a waste without any spirit energy. He didn't even have the qualifications to light up a single piece of it. This time, Chu Fumian was looking forward to it. He wanted to see how many pieces he could light up this time. All martial artists, those who have been chosen, light up the heaven's chosen stone in order. Taoist Jian Ke flew onto the stage and injected his spiritual energy into the largest heaven's choice stone. Suddenly, all the heaven's chosen stones emitted a dazzling light. Every seat in the ancient battle arena was by itself. Once a seat lit up, the cultivators sitting in front of it would enter the arena one by one. He walked in front of the heaven's chosen stone and lit it up. If he didn't go, it meant that he didn't want to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Every year, millions of martial artists participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. The Heaven's Chosen Stone was only the first test. If one couldn't pass the Heaven's Chosen Stone, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Taoist Jian Ke, how many Heaven's Chosen Stones do we have to light up before we can participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament? A martial artist suddenly asked loudly. 4. Jian Ke's elder slowly opened his mouth and said, "Those who can light up 4 Heaven's Chosen Stones can officially participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament." 4? What? You can participate if you light up 4? Some of the martial artists who hadn't participated in the tournament disagreed when they heard Elder Jian Ke's words. There were a total of 12 Heaven's Chosen Stones. Lighting up 4 was only 1/3 of the way. However, some of the martial artists who had participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament for the first time stiffened when they heard the number. They didn't have much confidence in themselves. Is 4 very difficult? Chu Fumian suddenly asked Gu Jin beside him. After all, this was his first time participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Although he had heard some rumors, he wasn't clear about some of the details. It's very difficult. Gu Jin nodded and said, in the previous 9 Regions Genius Tournament, as long as a martial artist could light up 3 Heaven's Chosen Stones, they would be qualified to participate. This time, there's an extra Heaven's Chosen Stone. A cultivator who can light up 4 Heaven's Chosen Stones is enough to be considered a somewhat famous genius and qualified to join the 7 major sections. It seems that the number of cultivators who can truly participate this time is less than 1%. 1% is really cruel. Without strength, you won't even be qualified to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Chu Fumian looked at the martial artists present and couldn't help but sigh. Among these millions of young martial artists, only 1% was qualified to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. As for the rest of the people, they could only sit below and watch quietly. However, the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was indeed a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Without strength, even if one forcefully participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, they would still die. Whoosh, whoosh. While Chu Fumian and Gu Jin were conversing, some martial artists had already been called over and flew directly to the arena. They each chose a Heaven's Chosen Stone and poured their spiritual energy into it. Bang, bang, 2 stones, 2 stones, 3 stones, 2 stones. Of the dozens of people who went, not a single one lit up 4 Heaven's Chosen Stones. How is this possible? My aptitude is in the top 5 in the sect. How can I only light up 3 Heaven's Chosen Stones? A young martial artist looked at the Heaven's Chosen Stone in front of him and said in disbelief. He came from a small sect and had been nurtured as a genius since he was young. Now that he was participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, he didn't even qualify to participate. How could he accept this? The spectators were much calmer when it came to this matter. Every year, there would be some martial artists who came to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, but their morale would drop greatly and they would never recover. The 9 Regions Genius Tournament was so big that no one knew how many geniuses there were. Of course, there would also be some martial artists who came to the 9 Regions Genius Tournament and experienced the vastness of the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Chapter 956. A figure landed on the stage and said disdainfully, "Today, I'll show you the difference between us." After saying that, the figure placed his hand on the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Thump, thump, thump. The Heaven's Chosen Stones were lit up one by one. In the end, 6 of them were lit up. 6. Who is he? Which sect is he from? Many martial artists could not even light up 4 heaven's chosen stones. The fact that 6 of them were lit up at once was enough to shock many martial artists. Even among the 7 great sects, his aptitude was not bad. He seems to be the top of the list of top 100 talents in the southern region, Mang Yin from the Black Sky sect. A martial artist suddenly remembered the identity of the person in front of him and said loudly, "The list of top 100 talents in the southern region? Isn't he a newcomer? A newcomer can light up 6 heaven's chosen stones." If a famous and fortunate expert from the 9 regions had such a result, it would be useless. Many cultivators would be astonished. However, Mang Yin was just a newcomer. Not bad. Looks like the Black Sky sect has a good seedling. Some warriors nodded in agreement. Mang Yin was a dark horse that had appeared out of nowhere. Many martial artists who were preparing to participate in the 9 regions genius battle remembered Mang Yin. Being able to light up 6 heaven's chosen stones was enough to make him a strong opponent. Go on, go on. Immortal Jin K said slowly. Yes. Mang Yin left the stage and stood in a special area around the stage. This area was where only those who had passed the test and were qualified to participate in the 9 regions genius battle stood. The test continued. There were already quite a few warriors who had passed the test of the Heaven's Chosen Stone and stood to the side. Although the Heaven's Chosen Stone's test was difficult, the number of martial artists participating in the 9 regions genius tournament numbered in the millions. Even if 1 in 100 was chosen, there were at least tens of thousands of martial artists who could pass the test. Other than Mang Yin, there were also some new faces. They were all newcomers who were participating in the 9 regions genius battle for the first time. Oh, is it the most outstanding 7th prince of the Yin dynasty? On the stage, a dazzling light shot up to the sky. A young man in luxurious clothes waved his hand and poured spiritual energy into the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Ding, ding, ding. From the Heaven's Chosen Stone, a dazzling light shot up to the sky. A total of 7 stones were lit up. It was even taller than the vast cloud from before. It said that an outstanding 7th prince has appeared in the Yin dynasty. It must be him. He's only a newbie after lighting up 7 gems. That's too scary. I heard that he's only in his early 20s. In the future, he might even have the chance to occupy the top 10. In this year's competition, he will definitely be able to enter the top 500. In fact, he might even be qualified to fight for the top 100. As long as one was under 100 years old, one could participate in the 9 regions genius tournament. Therefore, if it were some newcomers, they would be able to fight their way into the top 500 or even the top 100 in the first batch. It was very likely that they would achieve very good results in the future. 7th Prince? Chu Fumian looked at the 7th Prince. His eyes flickered as if he had used his spiritual consciousness to see through the 7th Prince's foundation. He's still hiding something. It seems that if he goes all out, he can light up 8 Heaven's Chosen Stones. It seems that I can't underestimate the experts from the other regions. Chu Fumian thought to himself. The 9 regions were so vast that there were indeed some never-before-seen geniuses. The 7th Prince was obviously one of them. The test continued. This wasn't the first time that a cultivator had participated in the 9 regions genius tournament. Their results weren't surprising. Most of them had 6 or 7 Heaven's Chosen Stones. Because many of them were famous geniuses in the 9 regions, their results didn't cause much of a stir. No one caught Chu Fumian's attention. What Chu Fumian really needed to pay attention to were the Demon Emperor Jian Zhanxian and the others. These were the strongest of the younger generation in the 9 regions. They were Chu Fumian's true opponents. It's your turn. Time passed little by little. Gu Jin, who was sitting beside Chu Fumian, suddenly glowed. It was her turn to participate in the test. Yes. Gu Jin nodded her head. With a move of her body, she leaped into the arena and landed on it. She pressed her hand tightly against the Heaven's Chosen Stone, gathered her spiritual energy, and poured it into it. Thump! A dazzling light rose from the bottom. 5, 6, 7. Only when he reached the 7th level and was about to break through to the 8th level did the dazzling light slowly disappear. The 7th floor. Who is that? I've never seen her before. Is she a newcomer? She doesn't look like someone from the seven great sects. Black Heaven sect? Firely sect? Or is she from that martial arts family? Some of the cultivators couldn't help but discuss Gu Jin's unfamiliar face. I remember now. She's the second daughter of the Gu family in Ning Province's ancient city, Gujin. Gujin. I didn't expect her to be from the Gu family. The Gu family had some reputation in the 9 regions. However, their reputation wasn't in martial arts, but in business. The Gu family was considered one of the third-rate families in the 9 regions. This girl hasn't joined any sect yet. The 7 great sects will definitely take this opportunity to rope her in. Of course. With such a terrifying aptitude, she might be able to reach the top 10 of the 9 regions genius tournament if she's nurtured properly. Sitting below the stage, some of the sect elders were sizing up Gu Jin, and they wanted to rope him in. However, they couldn't enter the arena during the test. They could only wait for the 9 regions genius tournament to end before trying to rope her in. Moreover, Gu Jin's true strength could only be displayed in the following 9 regions genius tournament. 7th floor. Not bad. Chu Fengmian nodded after seeing Gu Jin's result. It seemed that he didn't train Gu Jin for nothing. The 7th floor of the Heaven's Chosen Stone was a dazzling result in the 9 regions genius tournament. It was almost certain that she would be able to reach the heavenly mandate realm and become an emperor. Time passed bit by bit. The crowd's interest didn't decrease. Instead, they became more and more excited as the number of remaining cultivators decreased. True geniuses like Jian Zhanxian and Huang Wu hadn't made a move yet. Countless people were looking forward to seeing what kind of talent they would be tested for. Whoosh! Chapter 9:57. Jian Zhanxian's seat finally lit up. In an instant, Jian Zhanxian stepped into the arena like a sword. The warriors in the arena all stopped and looked in Jian Zhanxian's direction, their eyes full of anticipation. Jian Zhanxian pushed his palm into the Heaven's Chosen Stone and infused it with spiritual energy. The Heaven's Chosen Stone emitted a dazzling light that had never been seen before. The dazzling light rushed all the way to the 10th stone and slowly stopped. The 10th level. Seeing this result, many warriors sucked in a breath of cold air. Although many people had guessed that Jian Zhanxian's aptitude would be terrifying, they didn't expect him to reach the 10th level. There were only 12 levels in the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Anyone who could reach the 10th level was considered one of the most monstrous figures of an era. It's only the 10th level. Why are you so surprised? Seeing the surprise of the ordinary warriors, many of the disciples of the 7 major sects below curled their lips. The 10th level was indeed an unimaginable number for ordinary warriors. But for Jian Zhanxian, this result wasn't very good. The Heaven's Chosen Stone tested a warrior's aptitude. In terms of aptitude, Jian Zhanxian wasn't the best. Jian Zhanxian's strength came from his invincible swordsmanship and sharp sword intent. He was known as the Tianjin sect's once-in-a-thousand-years sword genius. It could be said that his true strength was even more terrifying than those tested by the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Starting from Jian Zhanxian, the geniuses of the 7 major sects all had their turns. The next person was Desolate Ancient Sect's Desolate Wu. Desolate Wu abruptly struck the Heaven's Chosen Stone with his palm. A dazzling light, even more dazzling than Jian Zhanxian's, shot into the sky. The 11th level. All the Heaven's Chosen Stones in front of Desolate Wu were lit up except for the most square one. This result was 1 level higher than Jian Zhanxian's. How terrifying. The last time Huang Wu participated in the 9 regions genius tournament, he was only at the 10th level. That was enough for him to make it into the top 3. Who would have thought that after such a long time, he would become even stronger? Some of the martial artists who knew of Desolation's previous achievements exclaimed in surprise. On the 11th floor, he was only a step away from the 12th floor. The 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone represented the peak of a martial artist's aptitude. Throughout history, there were very few cultivators who could reach the 12th level. It was hard to find one in 1,000 years. SOSO. Desolate Void muttered to himself. He didn't reveal much joy on his face. To him, his goal was to reach the highest level, the 12th level. The result of the 11th floor was not enough to satisfy him. Gongsun Tianjue. Next was Gong Sun Tianjue. He also placed his palm on the heaven's chosen stone, causing the same dazzling light to resound. 10th floor. Gong Sun Tianjue's results were the same as Jian Zhanxian's. However, the results of the heaven's chosen stone did not represent a martial artist's strength. For example, Gong Sun Tianjue had the heaven's unique divine body. In terms of strength, he was far superior to other martial artists of the same level. In terms of aptitude, he was 10% lower than Desolate Void. However, in terms of true strength, the two of them were evenly matched. Between the two of them, either of them could defeat the other. Their strength was about the same. Jian Zhanxian was the same. He could make up for the difference in aptitude with his sword Dao. Soon, it was the turn of the remaining 9 regions' geniuses to take the test. Yao Zhe, 10th floor. Wu Hongtian, 11th floor. Xing Xianqing, 10th floor. Mo Lietian, 10th floor. These results were all at the top of the 9 regions' genius tournament. It could be said that if these people didn't really fight, no one would be able to determine who was the best. However, in this batch, other than these people, there was another anomaly. The gazes of countless people turned towards the Demon Emperor. This was MOD's first time participating in the 9 regions genius tournament. Countless people were looking forward to seeing MOD's aptitude. Everyone was looking forward to this moment. A ray of light shot up to the sky from MOD's seat. In the blink of an eye, the Demon Emperor landed on the arena. Without any hesitation, MOD placed his palm on the heaven's chosen stone. Immediately, a dazzling ray of light shot up to the sky. This ray of light was more dazzling than any other martial artist's. Countless people's eyes were fixed on the heaven's chosen stone. 9, 10, 11, this ray of light rushed to the 11th floor, but it still didn't stop. It even continued to rush to an even higher peak. 12. Boom! A deafening sound reverberated from the heaven's choice stone. The entire heaven's chosen stone shone with a dazzling golden light. 12 floors. All 12 floors of the heaven's chosen stone have been lit up. This is too terrifying. What a terrifying aptitude. In the 9 regions, there hasn't been a martial artist who could light up all 12 heaven's chosen stones for at least 1,000 years. Countless martial artists looked at the completely lit heaven's chosen stone in front of MOD, dumbfounded. All 12 heaven's chosen stones were lit up. This was something that only happened in legends. It was said that any martial artist who could light up all 12 heaven's chosen stones was enough to stand at the top of the 9 regions. They were destined to rule the world in the future. Jian Zhanxian couldn't do it. Huang Wu couldn't do it. But now MOD did it. At that instant, almost everyone, including Sword Celestial and the others, were stunned. All hail the sacred Lord, the mandate of heaven, the sovereign descends. All the disciples of the 6 Paths Demon Gate in the spectator stand shouted loudly. They followed the Demon Emperor and saw the Demon Emperor crushing everything. They were all excited to the extreme. Terrifying. I can't believe MOD's aptitude is so terrifying. This person's strength hasn't reached the destiny realm and hasn't become an emperor. We might be able to defeat him. That's right. The 12 floors of the heavens chosen stone represent the sovereign descends. We have to kill him before he grows. Otherwise, none of us will be able to compete with him. Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, and the others' eyes were filled with murderous intent. They were the top geniuses of the 9 regions. Naturally, they weren't willing to be trampled underfoot. The heaven's chosen stone represented aptitude. MOD was too young. He hadn't reached the destiny realm and hadn't become an emperor. For them, there was a chance that they could kill MOD. The Demon Emperor glanced at the heaven's chosen stone with a satisfied look in his eyes. Then, he slowly descended from the arena. It wasn't until MOD left that the crowd slowly regained their senses. They were extremely excited. Chapter 958. The 12th level. As expected, the Demon Emperor is my greatest opponent. Asterisk. He had heard of the legend of the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. The Heaven's Chosen Stone was chosen by the heavens. Being able to light up all 12 levels of the Heaven's Chosen Stone meant that one had inherited the will of the heavens. one would definitely rule the world in the future. This rumor was a little exaggerated. However, those who could really reach the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone were all rare geniuses. Rising Sword, Slaying Immortals, Desolate Void, and the others were all a level higher. As long as they didn't die prematurely, they would definitely become unparalleled experts in the future. It is said that in every era, only one person can reach the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. I wonder if I can break it today. Chu Fumian looked at the Heaven's Chosen Stone in the arena and muttered to himself. His eyes were filled with eagerness to give it a try. In terms of aptitude, Chu Fumian didn't think he was worse than anyone else. In terms of spiritual veins, Chu Fumian didn't have spiritual veins, but divine veins. It was said that in every era, there was only one person who could rule the world. However, Chu Fumian felt that he was worse than the Demon Emperor. He, Chu Fumian, was a person who defied common sense. He had lived 2 lives, condensed the divine veins, and condensed the divine body of ice and fire. He had done too many things that others couldn't. At this time, Chu Fumian's seat finally lit up. It's my turn. Chu Fumian's figure flashed and landed on the arena in an instant. There were about 100 Heaven's Chosen Stones in the arena. Chu Fumian walked toward the nearest one. At this time, another figure landed from the stands and directly stood in front of Chu Fumian. Boy, get out of here. Don't waste time here. This figure suddenly stood in front of Chu Fumian and said disdainfully. This was a young man with a huge sword on his back. He was obviously a disciple of the Tianjin sect. He glanced at Chu Fumian with a cold arrogance in his eyes, as if he was giving an order. I'm talking to you. Don't you understand? Get out of here, lest you interfere with my test. Chu Fumian glanced at the Tianjin sect disciple. Chu Fumian had seen a lot of arrogant people, but this Tianjin sect disciple was obviously more arrogant than most of the people he had met. However, this person did have the qualifications to be arrogant. Chu Fumian looked over. The young man was around 30 years old, but he had already reached the destiny state and became a ruler. Among the countless geniuses in the 9 regions, a 30-year-old ruler could be considered the most monstrous. He did have the right to be arrogant. Unfortunately, none of this was a reason to be arrogant in front of Chu Fumian. I've seen a lot of arrogant people, but you're the first one who's so brainless. Chu Fumian looked at the Tianjin sect disciple and suddenly changed the topic. Kid, what do you think of our bet? Let's bet on the Heaven's Chosen Stone. If your talent is higher than mine, my life is yours. You can kill me or cut me up as you wish. Of course, if my talent is higher than yours, your life is also mine. Do you dare to bet on this? As soon as Chu Fumian's voice fell, countless eyes looked over. When these martial artists saw the Tianjin sect disciple in front of Chu Fumian, they all looked at Chu Fumian with miserable eyes. This kid actually wants to bet with Song Yao? Is this guy crazy? Bet on his life? Is he simply courting death? It seems that this is a hothead. He doesn't even know Song Yao's identity, yet he still dares to bet. Song Yao is the youngest ruler in the Tianjin sect. Betting on the Heaven's Chosen Stone with Song Yao? He's simply courting death. Sounds of discussion could be heard. They looked at Chu Fumian as if he were a dead man. In their opinion, Chu Fumian was indeed too impulsive. It was just to snatch a Heaven's Chosen Stone, so there was no need to fall out with him. Saying such words now was simply forcing himself into a dead end. What? You want to bet with me? Bet on the Heaven's Chosen Stone? When Song Yao heard Chu Fumian's words, he laughed loudly as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Ha ha ha! A piece of trash dares to bet with me? Kid, it seems that you don't even know my identity. Since you are ignorant, kneel on the ground and kowtow to me 3 times. Then, today's matter can be considered over. Who is this kid? How dare he provoke Song Yao? Is he courting death? This kind of kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth appears every year. But since he provoked Song Yao, it can only be considered as bad luck. The martial artists in the stands also looked at Chu Fumian as if they were looking at an idiot. Song Yao's aptitude was enough to be called the top among martial artists in their 50s. This was his first time participating in Song Yao's competition. Everyone already had high hopes for him. At the very least, he had the aptitude to light up the 7th or even the 8th level. As for Chu Fengyan, he was simply a nobody. Many people had never seen Chu Fengyan before. The result was obvious. Identity? You're just a Tianjin sect disciple. Who cares about your identity? Chu Fengyan heard the crowd's discussion and sneered. If you don't dare, then forget it. Are the people of the Tianjin sect a bunch of cowards? Chu Fengyan's voice was deliberately loud. Not only the entire arena, but even the martial artists in the stands heard it clearly. Kid, are you courting death? Song Yao's smile suddenly stopped and his face darkened. Very well, I've already given you a chance. Since you don't know how to cherish it, then you can go to hell. I'll bet with you. Kid, watch carefully. Prepare to kill yourself. Song Yao looked at Chu Fengyan with disdain and bombarded the heaven's chosen stone with his palm. Immediately, the heaven's chosen stone shone with a dazzling light. This light only stopped when it reached the 9th heaven's chosen stone. The 9th level. Song Yao's aptitude actually reached the 9th level. This result caused a wave of exclamations. This was Song Yao's first time participating in the 9 regions genius competition. He could use the heaven's chosen stone to stay at the 9th level. This was extremely shocking. One had to know that Jian Zhanxian's first time had only reached the 8th level. Kid, it's your turn. It's not too late to admit defeat. I can still leave your corpse intact. Otherwise, when you fall into my hands, I'll let you know what pain is. Song Yao looked at Chu Fengyan and sneered. The 9th level. This number was weaker than Jian Zhanxian's. In this 9 regions genius competition, this number was close to the top 10. Chapter 959. Oh, after being so arrogant for so long, you're only at the 9th level? I thought you could reach the 12th level. Your arrogance knows no bounds. Chu Fengyan said disdainfully as he watched the 9th level left by Song Yao gradually extinguish. Only the 9th level? Then let me see how many levels you can reach. Song Yao laughed at Chu Fengyan's words. From his point of view, Chu Fengyan was just putting up a strong front. Hurry up, a piece of trash. Let's see how arrogant you can be. Is that so? Chu Fengyan sneered. He moved his feet and slowly walked to the Heaven's Choice Stone. Then he slapped it with his palm. The Heaven's Choice Stone had a unique devouring ability. When Chu Fengyan's palm landed on it, all of his spiritual energy was mobilized and poured into the stone. Thump, thump, thump. The Heaven's Choice Stone devoured spiritual energy. The dazzling golden light began to climb crazily. The speed of the climb was simply too fast for people to see clearly. In an instant, all 12 Heaven's Choice Stones lit up at the same time. Boom! A dull sound was emitted from the Heaven's Choice Stone. This sound was exactly the same as when the Demon Emperor reached the 12th level. The warriors in the stands originally wanted to see Chu Fengyan make a fool of himself. However, the scene in front of them made their eyeballs almost fall out. The 12th level. Another 12th level. Impossible. Is the Heaven's Choice Stone broken? Looking at the scene in front of them, countless warriors were somewhat in disbelief. The 12th level of the Heaven's Choice Stone was a rare occurrence in a legendary land. Although it was shocking that the Demon Emperor could detect the 12th level of the Heaven's Choice Stone, it was still acceptable. After all, that was the Demon Emperor, known as the peerless genius who revived the Demon Tao. Even if Jian Zhanxian and the others suddenly reached the 12th level, it would not be too surprising. However, Chu Fengyan was a newcomer who they had never seen before. In the entire ancient gladiator arena, only a few people had seen Chu Fengyan. Even the people from the 7 major sects might not know that Chu Fengyan was the person who killed countless of their disciples. This is impossible. Song Yao stared at the Heaven's Chosen Stone with wide eyes. Then, he closed his eyes and shook his head. But when he opened his eyes again, all he saw were 12 lit-up Heaven's Chosen Stones. Even the dazzling light of the Heaven's Chosen Stone did not dissipate. Instead, it became even more dazzling. It hasn't ended yet? What's going on? Why isn't it over yet? The results of the Heaven's Chosen Stone only lasted for 5 seconds before disappearing. But now, the Heaven's Chosen Stone was still emitting a dazzling golden light. In fact, this golden light was even brighter than before. Crack! A slight cracking sound was inadvertently heard. Only Chu Fengyan, who was closest to him, could hear his voice. In the face of Chu Fengyan's power, the heaven's chosen stone actually began to crack. Not good. Chu Fengyan was shocked. He didn't expect the heaven's chosen stone to be unable to withstand Chu Fengyan's power. A crack had already appeared on it. If this continues, the heaven's chosen stone will shatter. With a thought, Chu Fengyan withdrew all of his spiritual power. The heaven's chosen stone gradually calmed down. This time, the way everyone looked at Chu Fengyan changed. Chu Fengyan dared to bet with Song Yao. This was not stupidity, but confidence. Absolute confidence. Even if Chu Fengyan gambled with Jian Zhanxian and the others, he would still win the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone. No, impossible. There must be something wrong with the heaven's chosen stone. Song Yao was still muttering to himself when the light of the heaven's chosen stone disappeared. He refused to believe it. Boy, you must have cheated. There can only be one person with the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone in an era. There can't be two people. Song Yao looked at Chu Fengyan and suddenly recalled an ancient rumor. He roared loudly. How can a little guy in the God Martial realm have such terrifying aptitude? I know, you must have known there was something wrong with the heaven's chosen stone, so you deliberately cheated to bet with me. Elder Jian Ke, this boy cheated. Quick, he violated the rules. Kill him. Song Yao shouted loudly. The dazzling light of the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone shocked, enlightened Jian Quebec. His figure suddenly appeared in front of Chu Fengyan. His eyes flickered as if he was thinking about something. The heaven's chosen stone was passed down from the ancient gladiator arena from ancient times. It might have been damaged after hundreds of thousands of years. Enlightened Jian Ke pondered for a moment and said, he was not too careful. Chu Fengyan actually had enough aptitude to reach the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone. Enlightened Jian Ke wasn't the only one. Everyone else had the same thought. They were somewhat skeptical, especially according to the legend. There could only be one person with the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone in an era. According to the legend, it was impossible for two people with the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone to appear in an era. Damaged? Chu Fengyan couldn't help but laugh when he heard enlightened Jian Ke's words. The expert who built the ancient gladiator arena was probably someone who stood at the peak of the 9 regions. How could the heaven's chosen stone be damaged? Boy, do you dare to try again? Song Yao seemed to have grasped at a life-saving straw as he looked at Chu Fengyan and shouted coldly. If you really have the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone, then try again. It's impossible for a piece of trash who came out of nowhere to light up the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone. Why wouldn't I dare to light it up again? However, your life is now mine. You don't have the right to bet with me. Chu Fengyan looked at Song Yao and sneered. How about this? I'll give you another chance. Take out a sword totem and I'll bet with you again. If I can't light up the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone, my life will still belong to you. Do you dare to accept this bet? Sword totem. Song Yao was stunned when he heard Chu Fengyan's words. The sword totem was the most precious treasure for a sword cultivator. There were only 19 totems in the world, and each one recorded the most ancient sword techniques. All the sword techniques in the world were derived from the records of the sword totem. The significance of a sword totem to a sword cultivator was no less than that of an extreme immortal weapon. Its value was extraordinary. Even Song Yao didn't have such a treasure. What, you don't accept? I've already given you a chance. If you don't accept, then I'll take your life. Chu Fengyan looked at Song Yao and said coldly, Song Yao, bet with him. Chapter 960. Countless people looked in the direction of the voice. The person who spoke was Jian Zhanxian. Apparently, even Jian Zhanxian didn't believe that Chu Fengyan had the aptitude for the 12th layer of the heaven's chosen stone. A wooden totem as tall as a person flew out from Jian Zhanxian's hand. It turned into a ray of light and suddenly flew over, landing in front of Chu Fengyan and Song Yao. A sword totem. At a glance, This wooden totem only had some ancient patterns. The swordsmanship recorded in this sword totem was obscure. Even most sword cultivators would find it difficult to comprehend even a little bit of it. Only sword cultivators who had reached the Emperor realm were qualified to comprehend a thing or two from this sword totem land. Once, the master of the sword Tao had 3 sword totems. However, with the fall of the master of the sword Tao, this should have fallen into the hands of the Tianjin sect. For Chu Fengyan, if he wanted to comprehend swordsmanship, the sword totem was the best choice. Chu Fengyan only wanted to make Song Yao pay the price for his arrogance. Since Song Yao wanted to go back on his word, Chu Fengyan didn't mind making the Tianjin sect pay a bigger price. Oh, the 19th totem? It's average, but it's still a sword totem. Chu Fengyan glanced at it and saw that this sword totem was the smallest of the 19. It was also the one with the least swordsmanship recorded. However, it was enough for Chu Fengyan. Boy, I'll bet with you. If you can't get the 12th layer of the Heaven's Chosen Stone, I'll kill you. Song Yao looked at Chu Fengyan and roared ferociously. It was a coincidence that Chu Fengyan could get the 12th layer of the Heaven's Chosen Stone by chance. He didn't believe that Chu Fengyan could succeed again. Then watch carefully. Chu Fengyan's lips curled into a smile. He slowly walked to the other Heaven's Chosen Stone and injected spiritual energy into it. All eyes in the ancient gladiator arena were fixed on Chu Fengyan. It was extremely quiet. They couldn't believe that Chu Fengyan could really light up the 12th layer of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. However, the scene just now still stimulated their emotions. Everyone's gaze fell on the Heaven's Chosen Stone in front of Chu Fengyan, waiting nervously. The Heaven's Choice Stone also emitted a dazzling light. In the blink of an eye, all 12 layers of the Heaven's Choice Stone were lit up. Boom! The dull sound once again came from the Heaven's Chosen Stone. 12 levels. It's the 12th level again. The martial artists around the ancient fighting ring were all stunned. The Heaven's Chosen Stone in front of Chu Fengyan emitted another 12 layers of light. In the capital of the 9 realms, it was hard to find a genius who could light up the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone in 1,000 years. But today, Chu Fengyan had actually done it. Under the astonished gazes of countless people, Chu Fengyan's figure slowly moved again. Chu Fengyan walked towards another Heaven's Chosen Stone. What is he trying to do? Could it be that he wants to try again? Countless people stared at Chu Fengyan in silence. He watched as Chu Fengyan once again arrived in front of a Heaven's Chosen Stone and injected spiritual energy into it. Boom! The dull sound once again came from the Heaven's Chosen Stone in front of Chu Fengyan. All 12 layers of the Heaven's Chosen Stone were lit up. 3 Heaven's Chosen Stones had been lit up in a row. If there was only one stone, there might be a problem. But if there were 2 or 3 in a row, then there would definitely be no problem. There was no doubt that Chu Fengyan's aptitude was indeed the 12th level. Impossible. Song Yao stared blankly at the Heaven's Chosen Stone being sized up. His face was already ashen. Every Heaven's Chosen Stone that was lit up stimulated Song Yao. A person that he didn't put in his eyes was actually able to light up 12 Heaven's Chosen Stones. This was something that he didn't even dare to dream of. How was it possible? This sword Tao totem is mine. Chu Fengyan couldn't be bothered with the dazed Song Yao. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed the sword Tao totem on the stage and put it into his empty ring. Spiritual Master Jian Kei's eyes flickered. When Chu Fengyan made his move, he almost stepped forward to stop him. The sword Tao totem was one of the most important treasures in the Tianjin sect. He couldn't bear to give it away. He couldn't wait to snatch it away from Chu Fengyan's hands. But this bet was made in the arena under the watchful eyes of the audience. If the Tianjin sect went back on their word, then the Tianjin sect would lose all credibility in the 9 regions. Many thanks. Chu Fengyan's lips curled into a smile. Originally, he just wanted to teach Song Yao a lesson. But now, he had gained another sword Tao totem. With this sword Tao totem, Chu Fengyan's 9 regions' sword technique could be improved. After Chu Fengyan retrieved the sword principal totem, he walked up to Song Yao and said calmly to Song Yao, "Kneel." Song Yao's expression was still a little sluggish. He only reacted when Chu Fumian walked past him and heard his words. What did you say? I told you to kneel. Your life is already mine. You'll do whatever I want you to do. Chu Fumian looked at Song Yao and curled his lips. What? The disciple of the Tianjin sect doesn't want to fulfill the bet? You. Song Yao pointed at Chu Fumian with a gloomy face. He originally thought that Chu Fumian would leave after obtaining the Sword Dao totem. He didn't expect that he would really have to fulfill the bet. Bet his life? Give his life to Chu Fumian? Of course, Song Yao couldn't do that. Asking him to kneel under the watchful eyes of the audience was the greatest humiliation. As the youngest emperor of the Tianjin sect, it was impossible for him to kneel in front of Chu Fumian. Song Yao's eyes revealed a hint of viciousness. He, an emperor, was forced to this point by a great ancestor. If they weren't in the arena, Song Yao would have attacked and killed Chu Fumian. He didn't care about the bet. However, this was the ancient gladiator arena. In front of countless experts, he didn't dare to do so. Young man, when it's possible to let people off, you should spare them. You've taken advantage of them, so don't push them too far. Spiritual Master Jian Ke, who was standing to the side, suddenly spoke slowly to ease the situation. You've already obtained the Sword Dao totem. You may leave. If Song Yao knelt today, it wouldn't just be Song Yao who lost face, but the entire Tianjin sect. Song Yao was the youngest emperor cultivated by the Tianjin sect. To a certain extent, he represented Song Yao's face. If Song Yao really knelt today, or even died at the hands of Chu Fumian, the Tianjin sect would really lose face. Chapter 961. Perfected Jian Ke pondered for a moment and then spoke slowly. He believed that Chu Fumian would know when to advance and when to retreat. He had already made himself clear. Knowing when to stop would be beneficial to everyone. He believed that Chu Fumian would consider it carefully. If both sides took a step back today, the Tianjin sect wouldn't lose face. It would be fine as long as Chu Fumian offered some compensation. It wasn't a big deal to offer some compensation to a supreme great ancestor. Compensation? Chu Fumian suddenly laughed when he heard perfected Jian Ke's words. Compensation? Chu Fumian's current wealth wasn't even comparable to that of a supreme great ancestor. Chu Fumian didn't need any compensation. Moreover, he wasn't interested in negotiating with the Tianjin sect. Since Song Yao dared to provoke Chu Fumian wanted nothing but his life. Chu Fumian's lips curled into a disdainful smile. In that case, the people of the Heavenly Sword sect intend to go back on their word. Chu Fumian's words caused an uproar. How could the warriors present not understand the importance of Song Yao? He was the youngest supreme great ancestor of the Tianjin sect. If he really died at Chu Fumian's hands today, it would be a joke. Since perfected Jian Ke had spoken, Chu Fumian should also take a step back. Is this guy crazy? Does he really want to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Tianjin sect? Some of the warriors' expressions didn't change. They couldn't understand Chu Fumian's actions. You want Song Yao's life? Sure, if the Tianjin sect offers me another sword principle totem, I can let him go. Chu Fumian looked at perfected Jian Ke and sneered. Another sword principle totem? Perfected Jian Ke's face showed some anger when he heard Chu Fumian's outrageous demand. Did he think that sword principle totems were cabbages? The Tianjin sect only had 8 sword principle totems. Now that they had lost one to Chu Fumian, they only had 7 left. Offer another one in exchange for Song Yao? That was impossible. The value of a sword path totem was higher than that of a ruler. Young man, don't be greedy. If you're too greedy, be careful that you don't stuff yourself to death. Reverend Jian Ke sneered. This condition is absolutely impossible. Please change it. Really? I've already given you a condition. Since you don't want to accept it, I'll take this guy's life. Chu Fumian completely ignored Reverend Jian Ke's threat. The Tianjin sect, as one of the 7 major sects, won't break the contract. Brat, I'm standing here today. Let's see what you can do to me. Song Yao suddenly roared. He had already made up his mind to break the agreement. No matter how important his face was, it was not as important as his own life. So what if Chu Fumian's aptitude was high? No matter how high Chu Fengmian's aptitude was, he was only at the divine martial realm, a mere ancestor on the fifth step of the life and death steps. Moreover, he was a ruler. Even if he broke his promise, what could Chu Fengmian do to him? Song Yao's words were met with boos from the audience. Perhaps everyone could guess that Song Yao would not obediently fulfill his promise. However, it was shameful for him to break his promise in front of everyone. However, Song Yao did not care at all. It was impossible for him to kneel in front of Chu Fengmian today. Break the contract? Is this how the Tianjin sect does things? Chu Fengmian looked at Reverend Jian Ke, who ignored him and questioned him. Song Yao is no longer a disciple of the Tianjin sect. I've already expelled him. This matter is between the two of you. It has nothing to do with the Tianjin sect. Reverend Jian Ke calmly spoke from his side. There was a cold sneer in his eyes. Today, he would first draw a line between himself and the Tianjin sect. In any case, he did not believe that Chu Fengmian had the ability to deal with Song Yao. Shameless. Some of the martial artists in the stands cursed in a low voice. At this time, Reverend Jian Ke suddenly said that he would expel Song Yao from the Tianjin sect. Wasn't it because he did not want Chu Fengmian to threaten the Tianjin sect? When the time came, even if Song Yao broke the contract, it would be his own action. It would have nothing to do with the Tianjin sect. Oomph. Reverend Jian Ke coldly snorted when he heard the discussions. His cold snort silenced the discussions in the audience. No one was willing to provoke the anger of a supreme ancestor. I'll leave today's matter to you all. With that, Reverend Jian Ke retreated to the side, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. Oh, so Song Yao is no longer a disciple of the Tianjin sect? That's good. I was worried that if I killed him in the arena, the Tianjin sect would interfere. Since this is the case, there's nothing to worry about. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile as he spoke casually. As he spoke, Chu Fengmian suddenly grabbed at Song Yao with his palm. Kill me? I'd like to see if you have the ability to do so. Song Yao said disdainfully when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. The difference between a supreme ancestor and an emperor was like the difference between heaven and earth. The moment Song Yao spoke, he gathered his spiritual power and drew his sword. The sword light burst out and pierced toward Chu Fengmian's chest. In for a penny, in for a pound. Since he had broken the contract, he might as well kill Chu Fengmian directly. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. A martial artist with the talent of the 12th layer of the Heaven's Chosen Stone must not mature. Now is the best time to kill Chu Fengmian. Despicable. He actually wants to kill him at this time. The countless cultivators in the stands had already seen through Song Yao's thoughts, and they all cried out in surprise. Song Yao not only broke the contract, but now he wanted to kill Chu Fengmian directly. As the supervisor, Reverend Jian Ke turned his back to all of this, as if he didn't notice and didn't care. Young master, be careful. Seeing Song Yao suddenly draw his sword, Gu Jin hurriedly reminded him. However, her words were unnecessary. Chu Fengmian's palm suddenly grabbed at Song Yao's sword. The blade of Song Yao's hand was tightly grasped by Chu Fengmian. In the next moment, countless cracks appeared on Song Yao's sword, and it was forcefully crushed just like that. What? This? How is this possible? Seeing Song Yao's sword being crushed by Chu Fengmian's hand, countless martial artists were shocked. They rubbed their eyes and couldn't believe what they were seeing. In the next moment, an even more unbelievable scene appeared. Chu Fengmian's spiritual power fell from his palm. An enormous claw of a war dragon condensed in the sky and descended. Chapter 962. Song Yao was kneeling on the ground. His clothes were torn to shreds, and he was spitting out blood. He looked battered and exhausted. He no longer had the demeanor of the Tianjin sect's youngest emperor. Song Yao used to be a famous genius in the capital of the Nine Zones. He was the object of everyone's admiration and respect. But now he was kneeling in front of Chu Fengmian in such a sorry state. The disparity was so great that the martial artists present couldn't believe what they were seeing. They even felt like they were dreaming. Song Yao couldn't even withstand a single move from Chu Fengmian. How is this possible? Isn't he only in the divine martial realm? Song Yao is an emperor. How could he be defeated in a single move? A ruler was much more powerful than 10 great ancestors working together. Even countless geniuses couldn't surpass this gap. But now, Song Yao couldn't even resist Chu Fengyan's attack. He knelt on the ground in such a sorry state. He was defeated in a single move. It was as if Chu Fengyan was an emperor and Song Yao was an ancestor. Their realms seemed to have been reversed. Even Song Yao himself couldn't imagine this. Chu Fengyan's power was simply beyond his ability to resist. By the time he reacted, he was already kneeling on the ground. He saw the gazes of countless people around him and countless discussions. It was the biggest mockery to him. Damn it, you can't defeat me. Song Yao crazily roared. Both of his eyes had turned completely red as monstrous murderous intent filled the sky. Terrifying power gathered around Song Yao, and it immediately turned into a sharp sword that soared into the sky. Still trying to struggle? Chu Fengyan sneered. The battle dragon claw fell again, bombarding Song Yao's body. Song Yao spat out another mouthful of blood. Then, all the power in his body dissipated. So what if you're an emperor? In the end, you're just an ant in front of me. Kneel here. Chu Fengyan sneered. Your life is mine. I won't kill you for the time being, but give me all your essence and blood. The blood essence of an emperor was enough for the divine tree to devour and evolve. Song Yao's essence blood must not be wasted. Chu Fengyan used his finger as a sword and drew a line across Song Yao's chest. Then, Chu Fengyan made a grabbing motion. An endless stream of blood essence gushed out from the wound on Song Yao's back. Forcefully extracting his essence blood was no less painful than being skinned. Song Yao's expression was extremely hideous as he continued to scream miserably. Song Yao's screams could be heard throughout the entire ancient gladiator arena. Even a ruler could not endure this kind of pain. Song Yao, senior brother Song Yao. When the disciples of the Tianjin sect saw Song Yao's miserable state, they couldn't hold themselves back any longer. Countless murderous intents were already staring at Chu Fengyan. A sovereign of the Tianjin sect sitting next to Jian Zhanxian shouted at Chu Fengyan. Released Song Yao. Release him? Why? Wasn't Song Yao no longer a disciple of the Tianjin sect? Does the Tianjin sect have anything to do with him? Chu Fengyan sneered indifferently when he heard the threats. Just watch from the sidelines. If you're not afraid of death, then come at me. I'm going to kill you. When the disciples of the Tianjin sect heard Chu Fengyan's provocation, they couldn't hold themselves back any longer. Countless rays of sword light were about to burst out. Stop! A cold and indifferent voice suddenly rang out. It was a symbol of supreme authority. Jian Zhanxian, who was sitting in the stands, slowly opened his mouth. His words caused the disciples of the Tianjin sect to withdraw their sword light one by one. Jian Zhanxian's status in the Tianjin sect was only second to the sect master. His words represented authority, and no one dared to challenge him. When it comes to Song Yao, you have to accept your loss. Since he chose to gamble with his life, it doesn't matter if he dies, Jian Zhanxian said coldly. Jian Zhanxian said coldly. He suddenly looked at Chu Fengyan. Being stared at by Jian Zhanxian was no different from being stared at by a ferocious beast. It was chilling. However, you have provoked the Heavenly Sword sect countless times in front of everyone today. The dignity of our Heavenly Sword sect is not to be trifled with. Brat, tell me your name. When we meet on the dueling ring, I'll definitely kill you. I'll definitely kill you. When these words appeared, all the martial artists present sucked in a breath of cold air. They all looked at Chu Fengyan as if they were looking at a dead man. For a figure like sword-slaying immortal, his every word and action was noticed by countless people. Every word he said was true to his word, since he said that he would kill Chu Fengyan. If he didn't kill Chu Fengyan, he would be slapping himself in the face. It could be said that Chu Fengyan and Jian Zhanxian had formed an irreconcilable enmity. They had completely shed all pretenses of cordiality, and there was no possibility of reconciliation. However, Chu Fengyan didn't care. He originally wanted to trample Jian Zhanxian under his feet. In this year's 9 Zones Genius Tournament, any genius would eventually become a stepping stone for Chu Fengmian. There are way too many people from the Sky Sword sect who have said the same thing. Previously, there was that so-called Jian Zongjia. Even the Smoke Emperor said the same thing. It's a pity that both of their corpses must have been eaten by the beasts. Chu Fengmian smiled coldly. His face was full of confidence. The only one who will die will be you. What? Jian Zongjia and Yin Emperor both died at your hands? You are Chu Fengmian? Hearing these two names, spiritual master Jian Ke suddenly looked at Chu Fengmian. His eyes were filled with endless killing intent. Chu Fengmian, this name could be said to be the nightmare of the Tianjin sect. Countless Tianjin sect disciples had died at Chu Fengmian's hands. Spiritual master Jian Ke couldn't wait to kill Chu Fengmian. However, this was the ancient arena. During the 9 Zones Genius Tournament, he couldn't do anything. Chu Fengmian? Very good. It seems that you have given me another reason to kill you. When Jian Zhanxian heard Chu Fengmian's name, the killing intent in his eyes intensified. He looked at spiritual master Jian Ke and said slowly, I will kill this kid in the arena. Hearing Jian Zhanxian's words, the anger on spiritual master Jian Ke's face calmed down. When Jian Zhanxian met Chu Fengmian in the arena, he would also kill Chu Fengmian. He would have to take such a big risk to kill someone in this ancient arena. This kid is actually Chu Fengmian. No wonder he dares to be unafraid of the Tianjin sect. Not only the Demon Emperor, but also such a fierce person. Chapter 963. They saw that Chu Fengmian was the one who did it. Many of the martial artists present calmed down. Chu Fengmian dared to kill all the disciples of the 7 major sects in the returning ruins heaven. This proved that Chu Fengmian had never been afraid of the 7 major sections. Other martial artists wouldn't have dared to do what he did today, but Chu Fengmian didn't dare to do anything. When Chu Fengmian landed in the area around the arena, other than Gu Jin, the rest of the martial artists hurriedly took a few steps back. No one wanted to have anything to do with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian and the 7 major sects had an irreconcilable grudge. Anyone who had anything to do with Chu Fengmian would be an enemy of the 7 major sections. Gu Jin was the only one who dared to get close to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had saved Gu Jin's life, so her current achievements all belonged to Chu Fengmian. She wasn't afraid, even if she had to become an enemy of the 7 major sections. I didn't expect him to come. MOD, who was sitting next to Gu Jin, sized Chu Fengmian up with hatred in his eyes. Chu Fengmian had killed 2 supremacies in the heavenly feather domain. It was a great loss for the 6 Paths demonic sects. This was the best opportunity for MOD to take revenge. You too, kill this kid if you see him. MOD said coldly. Yes. The 2 supremacies standing beside the Demon Emperor nodded their heads. Pairs of murderous eyes looked at Chu Fengmian. It wasn't just the 6 Paths demonic sects or the Tianjin sect. Experts from the Ancient Desolate sect, Medicine King Valley, Ancient Moon Valley, 9 Demon City, Sage Monarch sect, Dubby Temple, and even other factions like the Black Heaven sect and the Yin Dynasty. They were all looking at Chu Fengmian with murderous eyes. Some of the sects had no grudge with Chu Fengmian, but killing him was enough to exchange for countless benefits from the 7 major sections. Men died for wealth, and birds died for food. Killing Chu Fengmian would give them a lifetime of wealth. Who wouldn't want to do such a thing? Chu Fengmian condensed his spirit energy and turned it into a noble throne. He sat on the throne and looked at the murderous gazes on him with a calm expression. There were many people who wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, but Chu Fengmian didn't care. Chu Fengmian would kill every single one of them that came. He wanted to kill them until they were terrified. He wanted to kill them until they no longer dared to oppose him. Continue. Sage Jian Ke calmed himself down after a long time and spoke once more. The talent assessment continued. There were not many martial artists left. For hours later, there were no more warriors left in the arena. All the warriors who had come to participate in the 9 regions genius battle had completed their assessment. Chu Fengmian glanced over and saw that there were about 10,000 people left. This number was not considered much. After all, the total number of martial artists in the 9 regions was an uncountable number. These 10,000 people were already the pinnacle of the younger generation of martial artists. They were all slightly famous geniuses. What will happen next is the arena death match. Once you enter the arena, your life and death will be decided by the heavens. If you want to give up, you can withdraw now. Sage GNK looked at the 10,000 martial artists around the arena and shouted loudly. No one responded. Those who dared to participate in the 9 regions genius battle were all geniuses of their generation. They were all people who had walked out a sea of blood after a life-and-death battle. If they didn't go through a life-and-death battle, how could they rise from the ashes? If they wanted to become a powerhouse of their generation, they naturally didn't fear death. No one chose to withdraw. All right, the 9 regions genius battle begins now. Sage GNK looked at the crowd below and slowly spoke. Every 9 regions genius battle is held to nurture the geniuses of the 9 regions. This time, the prizes will not be stingy. Everyone, please take a look. As Sage GNK spoke, he suddenly waved his hand and opened an empty ring in front of him. Inside the empty ring, one could see mountains of spirit stones piled up as far as the eye could see. There were millions of spirit stones, and every single one of them was a royal grade spirit stone. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones. Heavens, this is too terrifying. Some of the weaker martial artists were so shocked that they almost fainted. A single royal grade spirit stone was considered a great fortune for a patriarch. For example, the best heaven grade room in Sky Connecting Tower only cost 5 royal grade spirit stones a day. Most of the patriarchs weren't willing to fork out that much money. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones was a fortune that some sovereigns couldn't accumulate in their lifetime. The prizes of the 9 regions genius battle had always been amazing. However, when they saw it in person, many people were shocked to the extreme. Chu Fengmian wasn't interested. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones was a great fortune for a patriarch. However, Chu Fengmian had a divine pulse and could condense a large amount of royal grade spirit stones at any time. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones couldn't arouse Chu Fengmian's interest at all. Could my guess be wrong? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. He had originally guessed that the Demon Emperor, the Sword Immortal, and the others had come to participate in the 9 regions genius tournament for the rewards. After all, apart from that, there was no other reason for them to participate in the 9 regions genius battle. However, although 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones was a great fortune, it shouldn't be enough for the Demon Emperor and the others. This made Chu Fengmian doubt his original guess. Soon, enlightened Master GNK put away the empty ring after showing it to everyone. However, another empty ring appeared in enlightened Master GNK's hand. This empty ring was opened in front of everyone by injecting spiritual power into it. There's more. What kind of treasure is that? Many martial artists were shocked when they saw the royal grade spirit stones in the first empty ring. Therefore, when the second empty ring was taken out, their gazes followed it closely. The first empty ring's prize was so amazing. According to the usual practice, the second prize would be even more valuable than the first one. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones, and an even more valuable treasure. Chu Fengmian also looked at the empty ring and saw a jade bottle in it. What came out of the jade bottle was a drop of blood essence with the color of chaos. Chaos-colored blood essence? An innate divine beast's blood essence? Many people exclaimed when they saw the color of the blood essence. In this world, there is only one kind of life whose blood essence was chaos-colored, and that was an innate divine beast. Only an innate divine beast born from the chaos could inherit the chaos bloodline. Chapter 964. The 7 sects are willing to take out such a treasure. Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he saw the second reward. The innate divine beast's essence blood had not appeared in the 9 domains for tens of thousands of years. The innate divine beasts of the primordial era had all fallen during the primordial era. Their essence blood had been divided among the warriors of that time. The essence blood of the innate divine beast contained the purest spiritual power in the world. To a cultivator, once they devoured a drop of innate divine beast's blood essence, the benefits they would obtain were almost endless. This was a treasure that even old Ancestor Wu would want to get his hands on. How could the top 7 sects be willing to take it out now? No matter what, I have to get the innate divine beast's essence blood. Moreover, this drop of innate divine beast's essence blood contains some dragon power. It should be the essence blood of the ancestor heavenly dragon. Chu Fengyan looked at the jade bottle in enlightened Jian Kei's hand with excitement. The essence blood of the innate divine beast was enough to bring great benefits to Chu Fengyan. In particular, this drop of essence blood belonged to Ancestor Tianlong. Chu Fengyan cultivated the battle dragon skill. It could be said that his body was close to the state of half-human and half-dragon. Once he got the essence blood of Ancestor Tianlong, it was enough to make Chu Fengyan's bloodline undergo a qualitative change. The benefits it could bring were almost indescribable. Chu Fengyan must get this drop of essence blood. Oh my God, the essence blood of the innate divine beast. Didn't the innate divine beast disappear in the primordial era? How could there be essence blood left behind? Don't underestimate it just because it's a drop of essence blood. Even if it's given to a piece of trash, it's enough to make his aptitude reach the peak of the 9 regions. This is the essence blood of an innate divine beast. Just one drop is enough to cause earth-shaking changes. Beside Chu Fengyan, sounds of exclamations could be heard. When everyone looked at the primogenitor Sky Dragon's blood essence, their eyes were burning with excitement. This emperor must get this essence blood, Demon Emperor said coldly as he stared at Tianlong's blood. Whoever dares to fight for it must die. The Demon Emperor was determined to obtain the blood essence of Ancestor Tianlong. If he could obtain it, he would be able to suppress everyone and truly become the #1 warrior of the younger generation in the 9 regions. Not only the Demon Emperor, but Jian Zhanxian, Desolation, and the others also had the same thought. Their strength came from sowing seeds, and when they fought against each other, they had always been duping each other. However, whoever obtained this drop of progenitor Tianchong's essence blood would undergo a qualitative change. At that time, he would be able to firmly suppress everyone and become the pinnacle of the younger generation of the 9 regions. This year's 9 regions genius battle was enough to attract all of them. Many of them already knew about it. What were the rewards for this year's 9 regions genius battle? This Khanate divine beast blood essence is the second reward. Now, there's the last reward. While everyone was still in a state of shock, before they could react, enlightened Jian Kei said again. His words caused an uproar among the crowd. What? There's more? The Khanate divine beast blood essence isn't the most precious reward. Originally, everyone had thought that the Khanate divine beast blood essence would be the final reward of this year's 9 regions genius battle. Who would have thought that there would be more? According to the rules, the third reward would be even more precious than the Khanate divine beast blood essence. All eyes were fixed on Jian Kei's elder. Jian Kei's elder slowly put away the empty ring that contained the jade bottle and took out another empty ring. When he opened the empty ring again, the scene inside was displayed before everyone's eyes. What exactly is this? The Khanate divine beast blood essence is even more precious than this. The warriors present couldn't wait to see what was inside the empty ring. The empty ring was empty and lonely. There was only a jade talisman lying quietly inside. A jade talisman? A jade talisman. Seeing the jade talisman, many warriors' eyes were filled with surprise. It seemed that they hadn't expected this. The value of this jade talisman was actually more precious than the Khanate divine beast blood essence. This jade talisman is the jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven. Anyone who obtains this jade talisman will be qualified to enter Wanbao Heaven, Sage Jian Kei said calmly. The jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven. What? It's actually the jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven? How can it be? Hasn't Wanbao Heaven been closed for a long time? How can there be a jade talisman? Some of the ancient sovereigns exclaimed in surprise when they heard Sage Jian Kei's words. Countless burning eyes immediately looked at the jade talisman. Some of the elites couldn't wait to snatch it away. Wanbao Heaven was one of the treasured lands that was on par with Returning Ruined Sky. In some aspects, Wanbao Heaven was even more famous than Returning Ruined Sky. It was said that Wanbao Heaven was a treasured land. Countless powerful spiritual weapons of the 9 regions were taken out from Wanbao Heaven. Returning Ruined Sky opened once every 3 years. Wanbao Heaven's opening was much more unpredictable. The real location of Wanbao Heaven was still unknown to the martial artists of the 9 regions. They only knew that after some time, some jade talismans of Wanbao Heaven would appear in the 9 regions. As long as one infused spiritual energy into the jade talisman, they would be taken to Wanbao Heaven. However, Wanbao Heaven had not appeared for thousands of years. This time, the jade talisman was obtained by the 7 great sects, and it was taken out directly. They didn't keep the jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven for themselves, but took it out instead. Entering Wanbao Heaven was one of the greatest opportunities in the 9 regions. It was said that Wanbao Heaven had an extreme path celestial weapon. If one entered and obtained an extreme path celestial weapon, one would be able to stand at the top of the 9 regions. The 7 great sects took out Wanbao Heaven's jade talisman. Indeed, it was enough to shock people. It's said that the jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven was obtained by the 7 great sects together. They couldn't divide it among themselves, so they could only bring it to the 9 regions' genius battle for it. After all, the champions of the 9 regions' genius battle every year are the geniuses of the 7 great sects. A martial artist who had heard some rumors explained. Chapter 965. Wanbao Hian's Jade Talisman, Primogeniture Tianlong's Blood Essence, and 1,000,000 royal grade spiritual stones. These 3 rewards were simply amazing. The rewards from the previous 9 regions' geniuses battles were insignificant compared to this one. 1,000,000 royal grade spiritual stones were still acceptable. Wanbao Yian's Jade Talisman and Primogeniture Tianlong's Blood Essence were items that even Forefather Wu dreamed of obtaining. Many of the experts present were itching to take the treasures away from enlightened Jian Quebec. However, they did not dare to do so. Enlightened Jian Ke was a supreme forefather. Among the countless supreme ancestors, he was considered one of the most powerful ones. He was already standing at the peak of the 9 domains. Being able to host the 9 regions' genius battle was enough to prove his strength. These 3 treasures belong to me. Jian Zhanxian stared at the 3 treasures in the sky and said coldly. He did not hide his murderous intent. Whoever dared to compete with him would be killed. Jian Zhanxian was not the only one. Huang Wu, the Demon Emperor, and the others had the same attitude. Everyone was determined to get their hands on the 3 treasures. Chu Fengyan was the same. He was determined to obtain the 3 treasures. If Chu Fengyan obtained the 3 treasures, especially Primogeniture Tianlong's Blood Essence, Chu Fengyan would be able to obtain it. Chu Fengyan was confident that he could devour it again and even choose to break through to the heavenly mandate realm. Once Chu Fengyan became a sovereign, he would be like a bird flying in the sky. Even if Ancestor Wu wanted to kill Chu Fengyan, it would be impossible. No matter who obtained the 3 treasures, it did not matter. It was easy to imagine just how terrifying this 9 regions genius battle would be. The 9 regions genius battle will now begin. Those whose names are called, step forward. Enlightened Jian Ke waved his hand and condensed a water screen from the center of the arena. The water screen had been passed down from the ancient gladiator arena since ancient times. The ancient gladiator arena itself was an extremely mysterious spiritual weapon. There were more than 10,000 names on the water screen. The names of all the participants were recorded there. Chu Fengyan's name was also on the list. The names on the water screen began to combine and line up. Every time the 9 regions genius battle was held in the ancient fighting arena, it was held for the sake of fairness. The ancient gladiator arena would automatically determine the opponents, and no one could interfere. Therefore, even if he were to encounter the Demon Emperor and the others in the first round, he could only blame it on his bad luck. The names kept spinning until the last 2 names flew out from the water curtain, shining brightly. seventh prince of the An dynasty, Chu Fengyan. These two names flew to the arena and began to expand. When they saw these two names, the martial artists in the stands all exclaimed in surprise. The first battle of the 9 regions genius tournament was so unusual. The seventh prince was one of the geniuses nurtured by the Empire of Destiny. He was famous in the 9 realms. He was very likely to enter the top 500 or even the top 100. As for Chu Fengyan, needless to say, he had just shown his talent of the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. He had become an influential figure in this year's 9 regions genius tournament. Chu Fengyan had killed Song Yao, which was enough to prove his strength. This first battle was a battle between 2 influential figures. It's my turn now? Seeing the names on the arena, Chu Fengyan smiled casually. With a move of his body, he slowly stepped into the center of the arena. As soon as he stepped into the arena, Chu Fengyan felt that the surrounding scenery began to change. It was as if he had come to a completely different space. The area of the arena had expanded by more than 10 million times. It was almost boundless. It was enough for one to fight to their heart's content. It's just as the legends say. It was Chu Fengyan's first time in the arena. He couldn't help but look around. He could roughly tell that the space in the center of the arena should have been opened up by an unparalleled expert. No matter what battle took place, the aftermath of the battle would not spread to the outside world. This made Chu Fengyan extremely satisfied. He could fight without worry in the arena. On the other side, the seventh prince also walked into the arena from outside. He stood in the air about 100 miles away from Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan, it seems that my luck is not bad to meet you directly. The seventh prince looked at Chu Fengyan. There was no nervousness on his face. Instead, there was a trace of excitement. I will trample you under my feet. You will become my stepping stone. Everything that happens to you will belong to me. Just as the seventh prince's words left his mouth, a short blade suddenly appeared in the seventh prince's hand. Hiss! In the blink of an eye, the blade broke through the air and directly slashed at Chu Fengyan. The speed of the blade was simply beyond the imagination of countless people. What a fast blade! The seventh prince actually hid such strength. The moment they saw the blade, many warriors were a little surprised. Even some of the sovereigns could not help but look more serious. This blade was enough to prove the seventh prince's strength. It would not be easy for even a sovereign to block this blade. When the blade was slashed out, it was ever-changing. It almost turned into a sky full of blades that locked onto Chu Fengyan. At the same time, they all slashed at Chu Fengyan. Too weak. Seeing the sky full of blades coming at him, Chu Fengyan shook his head. With a flick of his sleeve, a wave of spiritual energy suddenly blasted out. This wave of spiritual energy bombarded the sky, full of blades into pieces. Not a single blade was left. Such a terrifying blade was shattered in front of Chu Fengyan with a flick of his sleeve. What a strong strength. Chu Fengyan's strength is stronger than in sovereign. What kind of experience did he have to have such a terrifying strength? It seems that the seventh prince is not a match for this person. The warriors in the stands slowly sighed. The difference in strength between the two seemed to be on a different level. However, as soon as a warrior's voice fell, his eyes suddenly flickered. No. In the arena, although the sky full of blades was shattered by Chu Fengyan, they did not disappear. Instead, in the next moment, they actually condensed again. From the top of Chu Fengyan's head, all the blades condensed in an instant and suddenly fell with a loud bang, pointing at Chu Fengyan. The seventh prince's face was somewhat ferocious. Chapter 966. Boom! From the top of Chu Fengyan's head, countless blades suddenly condensed into a blade that was 1,000 feet long. It condensed silently and slashed down at Chu Fengyan. Many of the martial artists present were unable to react to the formation of the blade. By the time they realized it, the blade was already falling toward Chu Fengyan. It was so fast that it caught everyone off guard. Even Chu Fengyan seemed to be standing on the spot, unable to react. What a fast blade! The seventh prince was purposely showing weakness. Look, the seventh prince's strength is completely different from before. He's actually in the fate realm. Has he been hiding his cultivation all this time? I didn't expect the seventh prince to be an emperor. He deliberately hid his strength during the test. Chu Fengmian is in trouble now. Do you think he can withstand it? Not good. Even an emperor wouldn't be able to withstand such a sudden attack. Chu Fengmian's aptitude is terrifying, but he's still not an emperor. There's still a gap. The seventh prince's concealment is terrifying. We can't see through his cultivation. I feel like Chu Fengmian is going to be defeated by the seventh prince. The martial artists on the spectator's stand were talking to each other. They had just realized that the seventh prince had been hiding his strength all this time. It was so well hidden that they had never heard of it. The seventh prince's cultivation had actually reached the fate realm. Your empire of destiny really hid your strength well. On the spectator's stand, several elders looked at a white-haired elder. This white-haired elder was one of the patriarchs of the Yin dynasty. All's fair in war. The ancestor of the Empire of Destiny sneered. The seventh prince had been hiding his cultivation all this time. He was waiting for the best opportunity to show his true strength and catch his opponent off guard. Even an emperor or some of the most famous geniuses in the 9 regions could be killed by such a sudden attack. Chu Fengmian, I didn't plan to reveal my strength so early, but it's worth it to kill you in the first round. All the opportunities you have will belong to me. Die in peace. The seventh prince looked at Chu Fengmian and said ferociously. He had heard of Chu Fengmian's countless encounters. As long as he killed Chu Fengmian, all the encounters would fall into his hands. As the seventh prince shouted, the power of the blade was condensed to the extreme and fell into Chu Fengmian's body. You think I don't know that you're hiding your cultivation? The corner of Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a mocking smile. The seventh prince might be able to hide it from others, but how could he hide it from Chu Fengmian? Chu Fengmian had long seen through his act of weakness. Under everyone's gaze, the seventh prince, Chu Fengmian, the emperors, and slowly the emperor. What? What does Chu Fengmian want? Is he out of his mind? Is he crazy? Is he trying to grab the blade with his bare hand? Is this guy scared silly? Seeing Chu Fengmian's actions, many rulers were shocked, and their faces were filled with surprise. Any emperor would have to use all their strength to block the seventh prince's blade. They wouldn't dare to hold back. But now, Chu Fengmian was trying to grab it with his bare hand. He was simply courting death. Courting death? The seventh prince saw Chu Fengmian's action, and his face became even more ferocious. Die. The power of the blade rose steadily, and the sharp blade slashed at the seventh prince's right hand. But the moment the blade touched Chu Fengmian's skin, it stopped moving. The blade slashed at Chu Fengmian's palm, but there wasn't a single trace of blood. It couldn't even cut through Chu Fengmian's skin. Too weak. Chu Fengmian curled his lips and clenched his fist. The blade was held in the palm of his hand. As Chu Fengmian exerted his strength, the blade shattered from his palm. The blade, which even a ruler was afraid of, was so fragile in Chu Fengmian's hand. It was crushed right away. Ah! The seventh prince screamed miserably as Chu Fengmian flipped his hand and pressed the seventh prince's body against Chu Fengmian's palm. No matter how much power he exerted and how hard he struggled, he couldn't break free from Chu Fengmian's palm. This is impossible. Oh my God, what kind of body is this? Even such a terrifying blade can't break his body. Is he still human? Even a demonic beast can't have such a terrifying body. The eyeballs of countless warriors in the stands almost fell out. Even sword-slaying Immortal and the others were shocked beyond words. To them, defeating the seventh prince was something they could do easily. But to resist the seventh prince's blade with his body was crazy. Even if they were invincible in the same realm, they wouldn't dare to do such a thing. Many pairs of eyes looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a monster. Chu Fengmian stood still and let the seventh prince attack. With one palm, he broke all of them. Stop! On the grandstand, an aged voice suddenly sounded. It was the ancestor of the Yin dynasty. He looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted angrily. If you dare to kill him, I'll kill you. The ancestor of the Yin dynasty didn't care about the rules. He stood up and threatened Chu Fengmian loudly. However, Chu Fengmian looked as if he didn't hear anything. He looked at the seventh prince and said indifferently, Die. Chu Fengmian looked at the seventh prince. Ignoring the seventh prince's pleas for mercy, Chu Fengmian mercilessly condensed spiritual energy in his palm. With a squeeze, the seventh prince died in Chu Fengmian's palm. Chu Fengmian didn't waste the seventh prince's essence and blood and empty ring. He took them all and left the arena. Damn it! Damn it! The ancestor of the Yin dynasty was furious when he saw Chu Fengmian's actions. The seventh prince was a genius that the Yin dynasty had painstakingly cultivated. He could be said to be the youngest emperor in the history of the Yin dynasty. He had a bright future, but now he was killed by Chu Fengmian. In particular, Chu Fengmian didn't give him any face and killed the seventh prince in front of everyone. Chu Fengmian, the Yin dynasty will hunt you down forever. The ancestor of the Yin dynasty roared as he watched Chu Fengmian leave the arena. Idiot. Chapter 9:67. The word idiot was not loud, but it was loud enough to observe the entire ancient era's fighting ring. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the countless martial artists in the stands couldn't help but laugh out loud. He looked at the exasperated ancestor of the Yin dynasty with a mocking look in his eyes. Who was Chu Fengmian? Chu Fengmian wouldn't hesitate to kill anyone from the seven great sections. Why should they be afraid of a mere destiny dynasty? Speaking of threats, the seven sects posed a much greater threat to Chu Fengmian than the destiny dynasty. Even the seven great sects didn't have the right to ask Chu Fengmian to spare his men. What right did the Empire of Destiny have? What an arrogant kid. I've only heard of him in the past. I didn't expect him to be even more arrogant than the rumors. Huang Wu looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. I want this person's life. Huang Wu, this kid's life is mine. Jian Zhanxian snorted when he heard Huang Wu's words. Really? Let's see who gets to meet him first. After all, he caused a ruckus in the desolate ancient sect. A few old ancestors were angered to death by him. Killing him would be a great achievement in the desolate ancient sect. Desolate said with a smile. In the desolate ancient sect, the price for Chu Fengmian's life was extremely high. It was said that even the supreme ancestor wanted Chu Fengmian's head. He had no idea what Chu Fengmian had done to infuriate the progenitors. If Chu Fengmian heard all of this, he would naturally understand why the supreme ancestors of the desolate ancient sect hated him to the core. Chu Fengmian sneaked into the divine tree secret realm and took away the young divine tree along with all the dew sacred fruits. Chu Fengmian had taken away the fruits of the desolate ancient sect's 1,000 years of planning. If it weren't for Chu Fengmian's elusiveness, Ancestor Jidusu would have chased after Chu Fengmian to kill him. But now, Chu Fengmian was too lazy to think about it. As long as Chu Fengmian reached the Destiny Realm, he would become an emperor. Even if old Ancestor Wu were to hunt him down, Chu Fengmian would be able to deal with it freely. By then, all the dangers would be averted. Strength. What Chu Fengmian needed was still to increase his strength. My physical body is almost comparable to old Ancestor Wu's. As long as I reach the heavenly mandate realm, I will be no different from the real old Ancestor Wu. In the previous battle, Chu Fengmian did not use any martial skills or spiritual weapons. He could easily defeat the seventh prince with his physical strength alone. This kind of physical body had surpassed the level of a ruler. It was no different from great Ancestor Wu, who was in the eternal state. What Chu Fengmian lacked now was only his realm and his strength. As long as his strength could improve further, even if Chu Fengmian had not stepped into the immortal realm, he would be no different from Ancestor Wu. Congratulations, young master. Gu Jin smiled when he saw Chu Fengmian standing at the edge of the stage. Chu Fengmian's strength seemed to be even stronger than when he was in the ancient city of Ningzhou. In the heavenly tower, Chu Fengmian's harvest was indeed great. His greatest harvest was the innate divine beast Little Nine. Apart from Little Nine, Chu Fengmian's strength had undergone a tremendous change. Now, apart from Jian Zhanxian, the Devil Emperor, and the others, there were very few martial artists who could threaten Chu Fengmian. However, this was only within the scope of the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. If it was outside, any great Ancestor Wu was enough to pose a great threat to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's participation in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was an extremely risky thing to do. When the tournament ended, The great ancestors of the seven sects would definitely not let Chu Fengmian go. Although Chu Fengmian had a trump card and could escape by using the Cloud Feather Palace, he still needed to increase his strength as much as possible. I want to comprehend the sword technique. You should also get ready and wait for the arena. The edge of the arena was protected by the ancient Colosseum, so it was the safest place. No martial artist or power would affect this place. Even a great ancestor Wu could not attack Chu Fengmian here. Chu Fengmian's mind moved. He opened the empty ring, took out the sword principal totem, and placed it directly in front of him. Of course, the first thing Chu Fengmian did after obtaining the sword principal totem was to comprehend its swordsmanship. The sword principal totem's swordsmanship was enough for Chu Fengmian to perfect the 9 regions' swordsmanship. The more perfect the 9 regions' swordsmanship was, the stronger Chu Fengmian's strength would be. As a sword cultivator, swordsmanship was his foundation. At the edge of the arena, Chu Fengmian closed his eyes and began to comprehend the sword principal totem's swordsmanship with his spiritual consciousness. He swaggered in front of countless martial artists and began to comprehend the swordsmanship. Damn it! Seeing Chu Fengmian's actions, the surrounding disciples of the Tianjin sect gnashed their teeth. The sword principal totem should have belonged to the Tianjin sect, but now it had fallen into Chu Fengmian's hands. What made them even angrier was that it was not only the sword principal totem that fell into Chu Fengmian's hands. Song Yao was still killed by Chu Fengmian. It could be said that the Tianjin sect had suffered a double loss. Everything they had done had become a stepping stone for Chu Fengmian to establish his power. Some of the Tianjin sect disciples saw Chu Fengmian with his eyes closed and started to comprehend the swordsmanship. They quietly gathered their spiritual energy and approached Chu Fengmian. But the moment they were about to make a move, a sudden clap of thunder sounded in everyone's heart. It scared them so much that they broke out in a cold sweat. This clap of thunder was a warning from the ancient gladiator arena. If they dared to make a move at the edge of the arena, they would be killed by the ancient gladiator arena. The ancient gladiator arena was the safest place to comprehend the swordsmanship. The disciples of the Tianjin sect tried several times, but they all shook their heads helplessly. If they dared to make a move, the one who would die would not be Chu Fengmian, but them. In the ancient gladiator arena, it was impossible for them to leave quickly. They could only disperse and leave Chu Fengmian alone. Chu Fengmian saw all of this and felt relieved. It seemed that the rumors were true. The ancient gladiator arena did not allow conflicts. Now that he was safe, Chu Fengmian no longer observed his surroundings. Instead, he devoted himself to comprehending the sword principal totem. He extended his spiritual sense into the sword Dao totem. From these ancient and cryptic words, he could sense the swordsmanship. The 9 regions' genius battle continued. The battle between Chu Fengmian and the 9th prince had begun. Chapter 968. Although the sword principal totem contained countless swordsmanship, each of them was obscure and obscure. On the other side of the phone, even if some sword rulers or even supreme ancestors were to comprehend them, they would need to spend countless years to comprehend 1 or 2 of them. It was almost impossible to comprehend it in a short period of time. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had already comprehended the sword principal totem in his previous life. At that time, the master of sword principal also had a sword principal totem in his hand, so Chu Fengmian went to comprehend it when he had nothing to do. He already had this experience in comprehending the sword principal totem, so he could comprehend it thousands of times faster than ordinary warriors. The 9 regions' genius battle would only be carried out one by one. No one knew how long the first round would take. Chu Fengmian was not in a hurry. He sat where he was and continued to comprehend the sword principal totem. After 3 days, Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes. In 3 days, Chu Fengmian had already comprehended several swordsmanship in the sword principal totem. All of them had been integrated into the sword domain sword principle. The swordsmanship recorded in the sword principal totem represented the purest swordsmanship in the world. Although it was obscure and difficult to comprehend, it was extremely powerful. Many of the swordsmanship in the current era were passed down from generation to generation from ancient times. In the process of passing down, there were some that were lost and some that were deliberately simplified. After all, most people could not comprehend even one of the swordsmanship in the sword principle totem even after 10,000 years. Because it was too obscure and difficult to comprehend, the swordsmanship in the current era was more or less simplified. Although it was much simpler, its power could not be compared to the original swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian wanted to create the 9 regions sword principle, and the swordsmanship in the sword principle totem was the best choice. He had already integrated several swordsmanship into the 9 regions sword principle. However, this was only an embryonic form. It had not yet been used in battle or practiced. Swordsmanship could only be improved after repeated practice in battles. The 9 regions genius battle was a good place for Chu Fengmian to fight with experts and practice his swordsmanship. It's time for Gu Jin. Chu Fengmian opened his eyes and saw that Gu Jin had already landed on the stage. Chu Fengmian woke up to watch Gu Jin's battle. Gu Jin's opponent was a disciple of the Xiantian sect. Gu Jin's cultivation level was 1 level higher than his. However, when the two of them fought, their strength was on par. In fact, Gu Jin's strength was slightly stronger. When Chu Fengmian helped Gu Jin increase her cultivation level, it was not only increasing her strength, but also increasing her aptitude. Gu Jinshi was stronger than martial artists of the same realm. Even if he was facing martial artists of a higher realm, he would not be at a disadvantage. Boom! In the arena, Gu Jin and the Black Sky Sect's disciples fought fiercely. Gu Jin's battle experience was still too little. Even if he had the advantage in strength, he was still unable to obtain victory. However, as time passed, Gu Jin became more and more familiar with the battle. Finally, she managed to kill the Black Sky Sect's disciple with a single palm strike and obtained victory. The 9 regions genius battle was a battle of life and death. Unless one admitted defeat, it would be a battle to the death. Mercy had no meaning in the world of martial artists. With your current strength, it won't be a problem for you to enter the top 500. It's up to you whether you can enter the top 100. Chu Fengmian looked at Gu Jin and said, he had already taught her everything that he could. Now, it was up to Gu Jin to decide where she wanted to go. Gu Jin nodded and sat beside Chu Fengmian. She closed her eyes and thought about the battle just now. What Gu Jin lacked the most was battle experience. The battle of life and death was enough for her to increase her strength again. Soon, the battles were over. In the first round of the 9 regions genius battle, the strength of the participants was still uneven. For example, Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, and the others were almost instantly defeated by their opponents. Their opponents were almost powerless to fight back. However, as long as they waited for the next few rounds, when most of the weak were eliminated, every subsequent battle would be a tough one. Chu Fengmian closed his eyes and continued to comprehend the sword principle totem. Another 4 days passed. Chu Fengmian had already comprehended the sword principle totem. After 7 days, the first round of the 9 regions genius battle finally ended. The second round began. Soon, it was Chu Fengmian's turn again. Tian Jian Sect's Killer of the Sword. This was Chu Fengmian's opponent in the second round. Killer of the Sword? Another fierce man. Isn't he the madman from the Tian Jian sect? Interesting. He's going to fight Chu Fengmian. Watch. These 2 fierce men are going to fight each other. Seeing the 2 names flashing in the ancient arena, the martial artists in the stands were excited. Apparently, Killer of the Sword was also a famous figure in the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian took a step forward and entered the arena. His opponent, Killer of the Sword, was already standing in front of Chu Fengmian. Killer of the Sword stood in place and looked at Chu Fengmian with a pair of eyes full of killing intent. He was like a hungry wolf staring at its prey. Oh, an emperor who cultivates the sword principle of slaughter. With a single glance, Chu Fengmian could tell that this sword of death was filled with a piercing sword intent. Within the sword intent, there was an extremely dense blood aura. Obviously, he was a sword cultivator who cultivated the sword principle of slaughter. Chu Fengmian used to cultivate the sword principle of slaughter, but it was too unconventional. Now, Chu Fengmian wouldn't use it easily. However, Killer of the Sword was a pure sword principle of slaughter. The blood chi on his body couldn't be washed away. It was unknown how many creatures he had killed to have such a dense blood chi. He was already a sword demon. A sword demon. You're Chu Fengmian? Killer of the Sword looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly, "You'll soon become a ghost under my sword. I'll use your blood as a sacrifice to my sword principle. Slaughter." As soon as Killer of the Sword finished speaking, he suddenly attacked. The blood chi filled the sky and spread over. In the heart of this bloody aura, there was a blood-red sword edge. The moment Killer of the Sword attacked, the surrounding space became like a slaughterhouse. He was the butcher, and Chu Fengmian was the prey waiting to be slaughtered. Sword principle of slaughter? I happen to have a sword principle of slaughter. Let's see whose path of slaughter is stronger. Chapter 969. Chu Fengmian had comprehended the heaven-slaughtering sword technique in the sword totem. The heaven-slaughtering sword technique was a major branch of the ancient path of slaughter. It was known as the heaven-slaughtering sword technique, but it had been lost in the 9 regions because it was too difficult to cultivate. However, for a sword genius like Chu Fengmian, any swordsmanship would be easily learned by Chu Fengmian. He had just learned the heaven-slaughtering sword technique and had yet to put it into practice. Now, the Slayer of the Sword had presented itself to him. "Trying to fight me? Are you courting death?" The Slayer of the Sword sneered when he saw Chu Fengmian's action. Boundless killing intent was unleashed from his body. This killing intent was completely integrated into the tip of his sword. Suddenly, the Slayer of the Sword's figure was already facing Chu Fengmian. The sword in his hand slashed toward Chu Fengmian. Boom! A bloody mist burst out in the sky. Each of the bloody mists was no less than an all-out attack from an emperor. The blood mist that filled the sky, without any blind spots, bombarded Chu Fengmian. They collided with Chu Fengmian's sword in the air. The bloody mists were directly shattered, and Chu Fengmian's sword was also shattered and disappeared. The clash between the two sword lights was almost a draw. Chu Fengmian is really terrifying. His sword technique is actually not inferior to the Slayer of the Sword. Not only is his body strong, but his sword technique is even stronger. This sword technique is ancient, and I have never heard of it. A sword cultivator muttered to himself. The more proficient a martial artist was in the sword, the more they knew that if there was a gap between sword cultivators in a collision, it would be magnified countless times. The fact that they were evenly matched proved that Chu Fengmian's sword technique was not inferior to the Slayer of the Sword. Let's see. Interesting. Chu Fengmian and the Slayer of the Sword, these two fierce people. I wonder who will win. Countless expectant eyes were looking at the arena. It seemed that this battle was going to be an exciting one. Interesting. Your sword technique is not bad. It's indeed beyond my imagination. The Slayer of the Sword was a little surprised when he saw that they were evenly matched. Then, his face revealed a bit of ferocious killing intent. "Unfortunately, I can't change your fate no matter what. You will still die under my sword in the end." The Slayer of the Sword's figure suddenly disappeared as soon as he finished his words. In the entire arena, the Slayer of the Sword was nowhere to be found. Where is he? Countless bewildered eyes were looking for the Slayer of the Sword. Suddenly, a ray of bloody light of the sword appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. The Slayer of the Sword, shadow of Slayer of the Sword. Heaven and earth. The figure of Killer of the Sword had already become one with his sword light, reaching the state of one with the sword. He of the Slayer of the Sword was the sharpest sword blade. Slayer of the Slayer of the sword, of the. Its Slayer was a realm in the legends, sword of the Slayer of the Sword. To be understood to be. To the Slayer of the Slayer, to be had to be comprehenof, it to be. To be, to. The Slayer of the Sword. He had turned into the sharpest sword blade. His sword slashed toward Chu Fengmian. It was so sharp that the sword blade could not be blocked. Chu Fengmian won't be able to block it. I'm afraid Chu Fengmian is far from reaching the sword principle of the... Some of the warriors began to talk about it. The Slayer of the Sword had comprehended the sword principle of the... Only people like Jian Zhanxian and Huang Wu could defeat him in the 9 regions genius battle. Otherwise, no one could defeat the Slayer of the Sword. Good. kill him, and avenge the Tianjin sect. When the disciples of the Sky Sword sect saw this scene, they all exclaimed in shock. They were all sword cultivators, so they knew what the sword principle of the. Even Huang Wu and the others would suffer a great loss if they encountered this move. This time, Chu Fengmian would be seriously injured if not killed. But in the next moment, the whole arena was in a state of shock. Chu Fengmian slowly drew his sword and stabbed forward. The Slayer of the Sword's sword blade was suddenly shattered. Even the Slayer of the Sword's body was forced out from the sword blade. The Slayer of the Sword's face was full of defeat. His killing intent disappeared by more than half. The sword blade was broken, which caused great damage to the sword principle of the. Could it be that Chu Fengmian's sword principle is comparable to the Slayer of the Sword? Upon seeing this result, countless martialists thought of a shocking dance step. The sword strike just now was enough to force the Slayer of the Sword out and break his sword principle of the. There were only two possibilities. One was brute force. If it was a supreme ancestor, he could do all this with brute force. But Chu Fengmian did not use such brute force. The only other possibility was that Chu Fengmian's sword principle comprehension was not below the Slayer of the Swords. It even surpassed the Slayer of the Swords. As soon as this idea appeared, countless warriors could not believe it. But other than this explanation, there was no other way to explain what had just happened. Terrifying, an emperor could not help but murmur to himself. Most of their understanding of Chu Fengmian's strength was just guesswork. But now, it seemed that Chu Fengmian's strength was far more than what he had shown. Chu Fengmian, I didn't expect you to hide such a sword principle. It seems that the world has underestimated you. Unfortunately, your sword principle is on par with mine, but your realm is far below mine. The Slayer of the Sword looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. Even if their sword principle was on par, the Slayer of the Sword's realm still surpassed Chu Fengmian's. He was no match for Chu Fengmian in terms of sword principle, but he could crush Chu Fengmian in terms of strength. The Slayer of the Sword was not like the Seventh Prince. He was a veteran emperor whose realm was close to the celestial realm. He was 2 realms higher than Chu Fengmian. Seeing that his sword principle had failed, the Slayer of the Sword immediately changed his plan. The sword blade in his hand condensed again. A sword blade of 10,000 feet condensed from the sky and slashed toward Chu Fengmian. This 10,000 feet long sword had no edge, no sharpness, only a heavy force. It wanted to crush everything with power. Come. Chapter 970. Rumble. Even from outside the arena, one could hear the rumbling sounds coming from the arena. In the arena, the 2 sword edges caused the world to be turned upside down. Any one of the aftershocks was enough to flatten a 100-meter-tall mountain in the 9 regions. Countless spiritual energies collided with each other in the arena, causing a continuous roar. Chu Fengmian, let's see how many more times you can resist. Slayer of the Sword looked at Chu Fengmian and roared ferociously. The sword edge's hand bombarded Chu Fengmian again and again. The sword didn't seem to have any time to rest as it continued to bombard Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian, on the other hand, could only stand on the spot and constantly block the falling sword edge. As long as Chu Fengmian wanted to take a breath, the sword edge would fall, leaving Chu Fengmian no chance to take a breath. Not to mention counterattacking. It's a stalemate. I didn't expect their strength to be on par. But it seems that Chu Fengmian is going to lose this battle. His swordsmanship, even the Slayer of the Sword, is a level higher. It's a pity that his realm is still too low. The gap between realms is not so easy to make up. Jian Zhanshan muttered to himself when he saw this scene. The current situation seemed to be evenly matched, but Chu Fengmian had always been at a disadvantage. He could only resist passively. In order to resist the Slayer of the Sword's edge, Chu Fengmian had to consume a lot of spiritual energy. In this stalemate situation, what mattered was endurance. After all, the Slayer of the Sword was an emperor in the Destiny realm. In terms of the amount of spiritual energy, he was naturally far superior to Chu Fengmian. After all, Chu Fengmian was only in the divine martial arts realm. Chu Fengmian could make up for the difference of 2 realms. However, Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy was abundant. Naturally, Chu Fengmian couldn't resist the slay of the sword. If this stalemate continues, Chu Fengmian's ancestral spiritual energy will be depleted. Although it's a little exhausting, it's not wrong. Baron Wushuang nodded and said from the side. Now, the kill of the sword was bombarding Chu Fengmian countless times. It was competing with Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy, so Chu Fengmian had no time to fight back. He could only compete with his spiritual energy. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Chu Fengmian and kill of the sword's swordsmanship continued to clash. However, as time passed, Chu Fengmian's spiritual power didn't seem to be empty at all. On the contrary, the more he fought, the braver he became. Even his swordsmanship had become more and more proficient. On the other hand, Sword of Death was beginning to overdraw his spiritual power. Although his attacks were still fierce, he was still able to attack. However, the crowd could already tell that Deathly Sword was barely holding on. This was beyond anyone's imagination. How can this kid's spiritual energy be so strong? Almost endless? Seeing Chu Fengmian holding the spiritual sword in his hand, Killer of the Sword felt like he was going to die from anger. His original plan was to crush Chu Fengmian to death with his spiritual power. However, he didn't expect that Chu Fengmian's spiritual power was still not exhausted. Instead, his spiritual power was almost depleted. If this went on, he would be the one to lose. This kid is strange. Let's fight. Killer of the Sword's eyes flickered with killing intent. The sword in his hand suddenly paused. Then, he pushed his killing intent to the extreme. This killing intent condensed layer by layer on the tip of the sword in his hand. Behind the killing sword, an image of the unparalleled god of slaughter condensed and strengthened his power. Slaughter of the heavens and earth. Killer of the Sword's sword fell again. The power of this sword had reached the extreme. The ultimate killing intent and Killer of the Sword's slaughter sword principle had been fully stimulated. His entire body was covered in a bloody mist, and all of his spiritual energy had been condensed into this sword. This was the real killing move. Boom! Chu Fengmian felt the sword intent. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. It made him a little breathless. The space was compressed and condensed. This was the most terrifying move that Killer of the Sword had ever made. Kid, go to hell. Killer of the Sword looked at Chu Fengmian ferociously and roared loudly. His words were full of killing intent. This is your last move. Killer of the Sword. Can't you see that I've been using you to practice my swordsmanship? Now that my swordsmanship has reached the great success level, you're useless. Chu Fengmian looked at Killer of the Sword and sneered. Now you should die too. Slaughtering the heavens. Chu Fengmian spat out 2 words. It was just 2 words, but all the warriors who heard Chu Fengmian's voice shuddered. Even some of the sovereigns were no exception. The Slaughtering the Heavens swordsmanship was known as Slaughtering the Heavens. The peak of the slaughtering swordsmanship was to slaughter the world. All the gods in the world would be slaughtered. His Slaughtering the Heavens swordsmanship was constantly perfected and practiced by Killer of the Sword. It had reached the great success level and was integrated into the 9-region swordsmanship. Now, Killer of the Sword was useless. Rumble. Chu Fengmian opened his eyes. His eyes were blood red, and his killing intent soared to the sky. This killing intent dyed the entire arena blood red. Killer of the Sword was caught in the killing intent, and his heart was trembling. He had killed countless creatures in order to practice his slaughtering swordsmanship. He could be said to be a butcher, a sword demon, but now he was like a baby in front of Chu Fengmian, shivering. Chu Fengmian's killing intent was hundreds of times more terrifying than Killer of the Sword. Destroy. With the word destroy, Chu Fengmian's sword edge slowly fell. Killer of the sword was directly shattered in front of the sword edge. His bloody mist and killing intent were mercilessly shattered. His body was destroyed by the sword edge. Only his blood essence was left in the air, which was slowly devoured by Chu Fengmian and integrated into the divine tree. One move, instant kill. In the previous situation, Killer of the Sword had been constantly bombarding Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian stood where he was and used his swordsmanship to resist. Chu Fengmian, who was about to lose, made a shocking reversal with one move. Killer of the Sword died, just like that. He used in Sovereign to practice his swordsmanship. Is this kid really that confident? Chapter 971. Among the young geniuses of the 9 regions, the Killer of the Sword was one of the best. He was only below Jian Zhanxian and the others. If he hadn't met Chu Fengmian in the 9 regions genius competition, he would have been able to rank in the top 20 or even the top 10. But now, Chu Fengmian was using such a person to practice swordsmanship. Using the Killer of the Sword as a sparring partner was useless. Killing him casually? Arrogant. Everyone thought of this word in their hearts. Chu Fengmian's character was extremely arrogant. But now, he was qualified to be arrogant. The Killer of the Sword was like a toy in Chu Fengmian's hands. Crack. In the stands, countless cracks appeared on the chair where immortal Jian sat. He clenched his fists, and the anger in his eyes reached the extreme. The Killer of the Sword was one of the geniuses that the Tianjin sect had focused on cultivating. In the future, he might even become a supreme ancestor. But now, he had died in the hands of Chu Fengmian. Even his essence and blood had been devoured by Chu Fengmian. Even if the Tianjin sect had the ability to reach the heavens, they couldn't resurrect the Killer of the Sword. Slaying the Celestial, you must kill him. Immortal Jian looked at Jian Zhanxian and said furiously. Jian Zhanxian nodded. He looked at Chu Fengmian, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. This time, if they didn't kill Chu Fengmian, the Tianjin sect would never be able to raise their heads again. Seeing the killing intent of immortal Jian and Jian Zhanxian, Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile. The hatred between him and the Tianjin sect could be described as endless. Even if he showed mercy, the Tianjin sect wouldn't remember Chu Fengmian's kindness. Moreover, Chu Fengmian didn't intend to show mercy to his enemies. Chu Fengmian sat below the stage and closed his eyes again. In his mind, he carefully recalled the scene of the battle just now. Chu Fengmian did not use any other swordsmanship in the battle with the Killer of the Sword. He only used the heaven-slaughtering swordsmanship. He wanted to practice his swordsmanship. He had already finished practicing his heaven-slaughtering swordsmanship. With Chu Fengmian's current understanding of swordsmanship, he could master the swordsmanship through a comprehensive study after a few battles. From Chu Fengmian's mind, the ancient book that recorded the 9 realms sword technique opened once again. From the blank page, it recorded the heaven-slaughtering sword technique. Chu Fengmian sensed that the power in his body had become stronger because of the integration of the heaven-slaughtering sword technique. The 9 realm swordsmanship was already tied to Chu Fengmian. The perfection of a 9 realm swordsmanship was enough to allow Chu Fengmian's realm to continuously increase. However, it was far from enough for Chu Fengmian to make a breakthrough in his realm. If he wanted to make a breakthrough, he would have to constantly integrate the sword principles he had comprehended into the 9 zone sword arts. After doing all this, Chu Fengmian took out the sword principle totem again, placed it in front of him, and closed his eyes. He began to comprehend the sword principle totem. There were more than dozens of sword principles in the sword principle totem. If Chu Fengmian could comprehend all the sword principles in the sword principle totem and integrate them into the 9 realm swordsmanship, he would continue to practice. By then, Chu Fengmian's strength would increase by leaps and bounds even if he had not made a breakthrough in his realm. Chu Fengmian did not participate in the next few battles. Almost all his opponents automatically forfeited when they heard Chu Fengmian's name. The 7th Prince and the Killer of the Sword had both died in Chu Fengmian's hands. Many of their strengths were far inferior to the 2 of them. If they fought with Chu Fengmian, they would definitely lose, so they all took the initiative to forfeit. Chu Fengmian did not care. If he encountered a weak opponent, he would not even be qualified to practice his swordsmanship. Without being disturbed, Chu Fengmian immersed himself in the sword principle totem and continued to comprehend. Another 7 days passed. Chu Fengmian had already comprehended close to 100 sword principles from the sword principle totem. He was about to reach his limit. The sword principle totem in front of Chu Fengmian was only the last of the 19 sword principle totems. The swordsmanship recorded was also the least. For most sword practitioners, it was impossible for them to comprehend all the swordsmanship in their lifetime. However, 15 days was more or less enough for Chu Fengmian. Now, Chu Fengmian felt that he had already comprehended 101 swordsmanship in the sword principle totem. There was only one left that he had not yet comprehended. The last swordsmanship seemed to be more obscure and difficult to understand than all the previous swordsmanship combined. Even Chu Fengmian felt that it was extremely tricky. I don't believe that there is a swordsmanship in the world that I can't comprehend. Chu Fengmian's eyes showed some seriousness. Chu Fengmian was a genius in sword principle. He was a genius with a higher aptitude than the master of sword principle. There was nothing in the 9 regions sword principle that Chu Fengmian could not comprehend. It was the same for the sword principle totem. Another 3 days passed. Chu Fengmian's forehead was already covered with countless beads of sweat. Wholeheartedly comprehending the swordsmanship was an extremely tiring thing for Chu Fengmian. When Chu Fengmian was about to collapse, he finally slowly opened his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. The last swordsmanship of the sword principle totem was finally comprehended by Chu Fengmian. This swordsmanship is actually just an incomplete piece. The swordsmanship that Chu Fengmian had painstakingly comprehended was actually just an incomplete piece. It could not even be considered a complete swordsmanship. However, when Chu Fengmian carefully read the content recorded in the swordsmanship, there was no disappointment in his eyes. Instead, there was an indescribable excitement in his eyes. Although this unknown swordsmanship was only an incomplete piece with very little content recorded, Chu Fengmian could feel the true essence of sword principle from the fragmented content. The true essence of sword principle had always been an illusory rumor. It was said that any swordsmanship was qualified to approach the true essence of sword principle. The swordsmanship that was the closest to the true essence of sword principle was the best swordsmanship in the world. For example, the slaughter swordsmanship, the heaven slaughtering swordsmanship, and even the 9 regions sword principle that Chu Fengmian was currently practicing were already the best among thousands of swordsmanships. However, Chu Fengmian still felt that these swordsmanships were still far from approaching the true essence of sword principle. However, the incomplete piece of unknown swordsmanship in front of him made Chu Fengmian feel the true essence of sword principle. Just by reading some of it, Chu Fengmian felt that his sword principle was about to go further. The swordsmanship recorded in this incomplete piece is extraordinary. Chapter 972. Chu Fengmian was immersed in the true essence of the Sword Tao. He was trying to comprehend the pinnacle of the Sword Tao. However, the content of this fragment was too little. Chu Fengmian longed for it, but he couldn't decipher its true essence. It seems that I have to find other Sword Tao totems to complete this fragment. The Sword Tao totem really does have a great secret. The last sword technique of the Sword Tao totem was hidden very deeply. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had tried to comprehend the Sword Tao totem countless times, but he never noticed the last hidden sword technique. Chu Fengmian's second life was extremely beneficial to his state of mind and his understanding of the sword principle. Now, Chu Fengmian's sword principle was clearer than in his previous life. Only then did he realize that the sword principle totem still hid the last unknown swordsmanship. The origin of the Sword Tao totem had always been one of the mysteries of the 9 zones. It was said that it had been passed down from the Desolate era. Therefore, there were many different opinions about the Sword Tao totem's secret. Now, it seemed that this unknown sword technique was the secret of the Sword Tao totem. Only by obtaining all 19 Sword Tao totems would he be able to fully comprehend this unknown sword technique. Chu Fengmian felt that as long as he fully comprehended this unknown sword technique, his Sword Tao would take another step forward and reach an unimaginable level. However, it was easier said than done. In reality, it was harder than ascending to the heavens. Less than 10 Sword Tao totems had appeared in the 9 zones. Moreover, most of them were in the hands of giants like the Tianjin sect. It wouldn't be difficult for Chu Fengmian to obtain all of them. The Tianjin sect should have 7 more Sword Tao totems. If I obtain all of them, they will be of great use to me. At the very least, it won't be a problem for me to reach the heavenly fate realm. Chu Fengmian secretly planned how to obtain the Tianjin Sect's Sword Dao Totem. Although this plan was difficult, it wasn't impossible. However, Chu Fengmian's mind was still focused on the Nine Zones Genius Tournament. Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes and looked at the arena. The Nine Regions Genius Battle was nearing its end. However, this was the most exciting part of the Nine Regions Genius Battle. At this point, it was time for the experts from all walks of life to fight each other. Every battle was extremely exciting. Sword Slayer, Immortal, Desolation, Demon Emperor, and the others had also overcome all difficulties along the way. They had already reached this step with ease, without any suspense. The two reverends from the Six Paths Demon Gate had also entered this round. The rest were the geniuses from the Seven Sects and some experts from the hidden families. Most of the hidden aristocratic families were established by the bloodlines left behind by some powerful sects in ancient times. They had extremely ancient techniques that were extremely powerful. However, they were not enough to establish their own sections. Instead, they established their own clans and secluded themselves from the world, passing down their techniques generation after generation. Although these hidden families rarely appeared in the Nine Regions, no one dared to look down on them. It was even rumored that if the hidden families of the Nine Regions were to join forces, they would form a force that would not be inferior to the Seven Great Sects. Next battle, Chu Fengmian versus the Human Demon Reverend. Chu Fengmian's name lit up in the ancient arena again. Chu Fengmian's opponent was the Human Demon Sect's Reverend from the Six Paths Demon Gate. Kill him. When the Demon Emperor saw these two names, he said to a young man beside him, "Yes." With a flash, the young man entered the arena. The Human Demon Reverend didn't look like a reverend from the Six Paths Demon Gate. Instead, he looked more like a handsome youth. His skin was white and flawless. If it wasn't for his identity, everyone would have mistaken him for a young master from some clan. "You're Chu Fengmian?" The Human Demon Reverend looked at Chu Fengmian and revealed a cold smile. "I don't know what you've done to make the Sage Emperor so angry. However, the Sage Emperor has already given the order. If you meet me now, you'll die." The moment the Human Demon Reverend spoke, his demonic intent spread out without any concealment. In a land of demonic intent, demons danced wildly. In an instant, the surrounding space had turned into a demonic domain. "There are many people who boast like you. It's a pity that every one of them died in my hands. You'll be the same." Chu Fengmian laughed loudly when he heard the Human Demon Reverend's words. Sharp sword intent spread out from Chu Fengmian's body and killed all the demons that quietly approached him. Both of them are very strong. I wonder who's stronger between the two of them. I can finally see their true strength. In the past, both Chu Fengmian and the Human Demon Supremacy had crushed their enemies with overwhelming force. Even when Chu Fengmian encountered the killer of the sword, he was able to kill his opponent with ease. If he truly attacked, he would be able to kill his opponent with a single slash. It could be said that he hadn't shown his true strength yet. It was the same for the Human Demon Reverend. The sudden rise of the Six Paths Demon Gate had stirred up countless rumors in the Nine Domains. Everyone was looking forward to this battle. "Where's your ancestral dragon supreme sword? Take it out." The Human Demon Reverend glanced at the spiritual sword in Chu Fengmian's hand and suddenly said, "The ancestral dragon supreme sword, the supreme treasure of the Dragon Clan, should be in your hands, right? You don't need to worry about whether I use the ancestral dragon supreme sword or not. At least for now, you're not worthy of me using it." Chu Fengmian shook his head when he heard the Human Demon Reverend's words. Not worthy. The Human Demon Reverend's eyes turned cold when he heard the word. "Very well, Chu Fengmian. You're arrogant enough. Let's see how long you can be arrogant today." The Human Demon Reverend snorted coldly and gathered his demonic intent in his palm. Suddenly, he struck at Chu Fengmian with his palm. The Human Demon Reverend's technique was completely demonic. Not only did his palm strike contain terrifying demonic intent, but it also contained layers of heart demons. A chaotic image appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. His eyes were a little sluggish. What's going on? Is Chu Fengmian scared out of his wits? Some of the martial artists on the spectator stand were confused when they saw Chu Fengmian's sudden change. Heart Demon. It's the great heart demon art. One of the martial highness realm cultivators said as a thought crossed his mind. Chapter 973. What? The Great Heart Demon Mantra? The Great Heart Demon Mantra caused an uproar in the stands. The Great Heart Demon Mantra was one of the most terrifying mantras of the demonic path. Every martial artist had a heart demon. The more powerful a martial artist was, the more severe their heart demon would be. Normally, it wouldn't have any effect, but once the heart demon erupted, it could even threaten one's life. Countless experts throughout history had their bodies taken over by the heart demon, causing them to fall into a state of madness. Moreover, even if one had the means to suppress the heart demon, it would take a lot of time. That time was enough for one to die thousands of times in a battle. Therefore, the Great Heart Demon Mantra was the most dreaded technique when fighting against the demonic path. Due to the terror of the Great Heart Demon Mantra, it was destroyed along with the destruction of the 6 demonic gates tens of thousands of years ago, never to be passed down again. But today, with the appearance of the 6 demonic gates, the Great Heart Demon Mantra was once again used by the human demon Supreme Lord. This time, Chu Fengmian is in trouble. Unprepared for the Great Heart Demon Mantra, he's dead for sure. Countless martial artists didn't expect the human demon Supreme Lord to use such an absolute killing move right from the start, causing an uproar. Many sovereigns at the edge of the arena, including Jian Zhanxian, stared at the human demon Supreme Lord as if they were considering how to deal with the Great Heart Demon Mantra. Great Heart Demon Mantra? You dare to use such a childish trick on me? Chu Fengmian recovered in an instant. He wasn't even afraid of the heart demon of the heavenly tribulation, so the human demon Supreme Lord's Great Heart Demon Mantra was useless against him. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian's spiritual sword was suddenly unsheathed, and a sword ray slashed at the human demon Supreme Lord's palm. Bang! The condensed spiritual energy in front of the human demon Supreme Lord was shattered on the spot by Chu Fengmian's sword, and he was suddenly sent flying. A 3-inch wound was left on the human demon supremacy's arm. Drops of blood flowed down the arm of the human demon supremacy. These drops of essence blood weren't the usual red, but a kind of black-purple. Every drop that flowed down would gradually dissipate, turning into extremely pure demonic will. The Great Heart Demon Mantra is actually ineffective against Chu Fengmian. Seeing the injured human demon High Lord, countless people looked at Chu Fengmian in disbelief. Just now, the human demon Venerable had taken the initiative to use the Great Heart Demon Mantra. Even if Chu Fengmian had a way to deal with it, he should still hesitate. However, from the looks of it now, Chu Fengmian was not affected in the slightest. Just how tough was his mind to be able to be completely unaffected by the Great Heart Demon Mantra? Monster! This Chu Fengmian is really a monster. Could it be that he is really a monster that can stand on equal footing with the Demon Emperor? Some warriors looked at Chu Fengmian and muttered to themselves. Everyone knew how terrifying the Great Heart Demon technique was. Even some rulers or even some supreme ancestors would be in danger if they rashly encountered the technique. Dispelling the effects of the major demon heart mantra was not an easy task, let alone completely disregarding its effects. His mental fortitude had already reached an unimaginable level. Even when Chu Fengmian showed the talent of the 12th layer of the Heaven's Chosen Stone, no one thought that he could stand on equal footing with the Demon Emperor. But now, Chu Fengmian's performance had exceeded everyone's imagination. Very good. You are indeed capable to be the Saint Emperor's opponent. If you die in the hands of the Great Heart Demon Mantra, you are not worthy to be the Saint Emperor's opponent. The human demon High Lord roared angrily. The surrounding demonic will all merged into his body. The human demon High Lord opened his mouth and swallowed all the demonic will into his body. Bang, 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 bang. The demonic will seemed to have transformed the human demon High Lord's body into an unimaginable state. The injury on his arm recovered in an instant. Then, a layer of purple scales slowly grew out from his skin. The human demon High Lord's body swelled, becoming taller and taller. In a breath's time, his body had expanded dozens of times. Demonization. The human demon High Lord in front of him was his true form. The human demon High Lord was originally an emperor of the heavenly fate realm. His strength was outstanding among countless emperors of the heavenly fate realm. After demonification, his strength rose once again, reaching an unimaginably terrifying level. Paramount Realm. An emperor shouted in disbelief as he stared at the human demon High Lord. He saw that the human demon High Lord's realm seemed to have broken through a critical point. After demonization, the human demon High Lord's realm had reached the 8th step of the life and death steps, the Paramount Realm. Chu Fengyan, you are qualified to witness my true strength. It is your honor to die under my full strength. The human demon High Lord's voice became hoarse. His body had turned into an ancient demon god. With a loud roar, all the spiritual energy in his body was integrated into the wind of his fist. Suddenly, he punched out. Demonic will scattered in all directions. The power of the Paramount Realm was directly blasted out by the human demon High Lord's punch. The surrounding space was about to be torn into pieces. The entire ancient gladiator arena was shaken. This is the High Lord of the Six-Path Demon Gates. How could a High Lord reach such strength? The Paramount Realm was the level of half-step supreme ancestor. It could be said that it surpassed countless emperors. As long as it took one more step, it would break through the immortal realm and step into the supreme ancestor realm. The human demon High Lord's full strength had reached such a level. The strength of the Six-Path Demon Gates is unfathomable. Some warriors looked at the human demon High Lord's strength and thought inwardly. The human demon High Lord was only one of the High Lords of the Six-Path Demon Gates. If the human demon High Lord was so terrifying, then wouldn't the demon emperor be even more terrifying? After all, a figure like the human demon High Lord was willing to serve the demon emperor. If Chu Fengyan can pass this trial, he will be able to stand at the peak of the younger generation. Most of the warriors looked at Chu Fengyan. The human demon High Lord's strength had been forced out. They wanted to see if Chu Fengyan's trump card could withstand this punch. Paramount Realm? It's useless. If you can't reach the Supreme Ancestor's level, it doesn't matter how high your realm is. In the arena, Chu Fengyan looked at the human demon High Lord's shocking punch with disdain. Chapter 974. What is he going to do? Is Chu Fengyan still not going to use his spiritual weapon? Could it be that Chu Fengyan is going to fight the human demon supremacy with his physical body? Is he crazy? Or is he courting death? The spectators were shocked by Chu Fengyan's actions. They knew that Chu Fengyan still had trump cards. It was rumored that Chu Fengyan had the Ancestral Dragon Supreme Sword and the Battle Dragon Chariot. Once he used these two spiritual weapons, his strength would be much more than that. But now, Chu Fengyan was still not going to use his spiritual weapons in the face of the human demon supremacy's attack. Choosing to take the attack of a Paramount Realm expert head-on was no different from committing suicide. Too arrogant. Desolate Void looked at Chu Fengyan and shook his head. He was not the only one. Even Sword Immortal and the others felt that Chu Fengyan was being too arrogant after seeing his actions. Even they didn't dare to say that they could resist the human demon supremacy's attack with their physical body. Courting death? The human demon supremacy's face turned even colder when he saw Chu Fengyan's actions. Now that Chu Fengyan wasn't using his spiritual weapon, it was his best chance. The human demon supremacy's spiritual energy surged again. His demonic will was completely integrated into his fist wind, and his speed was countless times faster. He bombarded Chu Fengyan with his fists. Obviously, he was going to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Chu Fengyan without giving him any chance to retaliate. With such speed, Chu Fengyan couldn't even activate his spiritual weapon in time. Oh no, Chu Fengyan is too arrogant. I'm afraid Chu Fengyan will be killed by such an attack. The spectators became nervous when they saw the changes in the human demon supremacy's strength. If it was said that Chu Fengyan was overconfident in resisting the attack just now, then even if Chu Fengyan resisted it, he would only suffer a small loss. But now, if Chu Fengyan tried to resist the human demon supremacy's punch with his physical body, he might even be killed on the spot. When the martial artists from the Six Paths Demon sect saw this scene, they all revealed smiles on their faces. They didn't believe that Chu Fengyan could withstand such a punch. Now was the best opportunity to kill Chu Fengyan. In the arena, as the fist neared Chu Fengyan's body, Chu Fengyan's eyes widened. Only then did Chu Fengyan's figure move slowly. A dragon might rose from his body and started to merge with Chu Fengyan's body. Roar! As a dragon roar resounded through the world, the dragon might on Chu Fengyan's body immediately condensed into layers of dragon scales. Chu Fengyan's body underwent a tremendous transformation. In an instant, Chu Fengyan's body turned into a huge primordial war dragon that contained terrifying dragon power. Then, he charged at the human demon supremacy with his body. Battle dragon dances in the heavens. The massive primordial war dragon immediately rushed forward and crushed the fist winds of the human demon supremacy layer by layer with its terrifying power. More than half of the remaining power bombarded the human demon supremacy's body, sending him flying 1,000 miles away. A clear claw mark could be seen on his chest. Black-purple, demonic blood flowed down the wound and dripped down. Damn it! Damn it! Kid, I'm going to kill you. Birth of the demonic seed, human demon power. The human demon supremacy was sent flying. His hair was disheveled and his face was filled with anger. Today I'll kill you. From the human demon sovereign's chest, a fist-sized seed suddenly condensed and then shattered. The terrifying demonic will from the fist-sized seed merged with the human demon supremacy's body. Immediately, the human demon supremacy's strength began to rise again. Human demon seed? Good stuff. This must be the inheritance seed of the human demon sect of the Six Paths Demon sect. I didn't expect you to take out such a thing. Since that's the case, give it to me. Everlasting sword art, break. Sword intent immediately gathered in Chu Fengyan's palm. In a breath's time, hundreds of swords slashed out at the same time, piercing into the human demon supremacy's body and scattering the demonic intent around him. At the same time, Chu Fengyan suddenly attacked. The colossal war dragon claw immediately grabbed the human demon seed in front of the human demon supremacy. Bang! The demonic will of the human demon seed was shattered by Chu Fengyan's dragon might. With a wave of his hand, the seed fell into Chu Fengyan's palm. The inheritance of the Six Paths Demon sect was inherited from the human demon seed. Chu Fengyan had heard about it before. He didn't expect the human demon supremacy to have the human demon seed. Now that the human demon seed had fallen into Chu Fengyan's hand, he could obtain the inheritance of the Six Paths Demon sect through it. The supreme treasure of the Six Paths Demon sect had fallen into Chu Fengyan's hand. Damn it, give it back to me. When the human demon supremacy saw Chu Fengyan take away the human demon seed, his face turned crazy. All of his power came from the demonic human seed. If the demonic human seed was taken away, his power would not be able to advance any further. Give it back to you? Do you think you're qualified? Moreover, you're useless now. Die. Chu Fengyan looked at the human demon's supremacy with disdain. After losing the human demon seed, the human demon supremacy's strength had recovered to the level of an ordinary emperor. Chu Fengyan didn't put him in his eyes at all. Hundreds of sword chi condensed around Chu Fengyan and slashed at the human demon supremacy. The human demon supremacy's body was instantly pierced by countless sword chi. Bang, bang, bang. A series of earth-shattering sounds rang out from the human demon supremacy's body. Countless blood splattered in the air. All of them were shattered and minced by the sword chi. Only a lump of flesh was left in the air. There was no trace of the human demon supremacy. Even so, the human demon supremacy was still alive. He had reached the emperor realm, and his vitality had reached a terrifying level. The lump of flesh was still condensing and reforming. Kid, you can kill me. Don't worry, I'll take back the human demon seed sooner or later. From this mass of flesh and blood, the human demon high lord's resentful voice could be heard. I surrender. In the ancient gladiator arena, as long as one wanted to surrender, they could take the initiative to do so. However, before the human demon supremacy could finish his words, Chu Fengmian's body turned into a bolt of lightning and suddenly appeared in front of him. Chapter 975. As he spoke, Chu Fengmian sent another palm strike at the human demon supremacy. Once again, the lump of flesh was smashed into pieces by Chu Fengmian's palm. The human demon supremacy didn't even have the strength to utter the words, "I surrender." Ravaged, the cultivators and the spectator stand all sucked in a breath of cold air. Judging from Chu Fengmian's previous attack, it wasn't that he didn't have a way to kill the human demon supremacy, but that he didn't intend to do so. He had been ravaging the human demon supremacy all this time. The crowd stared blankly at the unbelievable scene. A High Lord from the Six Paths Demon Gate was like a piece of trash in Chu Fengmian's hands, being trampled on. He was a sovereign of the heavenly realm, someone who had surpassed the heavenly mandate realm and stood at the peak of the 9 domains. Yet, he couldn't even resist Chu Fengmian's attack and was defeated so miserably. Supremacy. The disciples of the Six Paths Demon Gate were no longer as complacent as before. Their faces turned ugly when they saw the human demon supremacy being ravaged by Chu Fengmian. Even the demon emperor's face turned gloomy. He didn't bother to conceal the anger on his face. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't interfere with the battle in the ancient gladiator arena, he would have personally come to kill Chu Fengmian. Let him go. As long as you let him go, the enmity between the Six Paths Demon Gate and you will be written off. The demon emperor looked at Chu Fengmian and suddenly spoke. He couldn't enter the ancient gladiator arena, but his voice could be heard from outside. "Oh, let him go." Chu Fengmian suddenly stopped when he heard the demon emperor's words. He used his spiritual energy to suppress the human demon supremacy. On the other hand, he looked at the demon emperor with interest. "That's right. As long as you let him go, the enmity between the Six Paths Demon Gate and you will be written off. The matter of you killing 2 supremacies of the Six Paths Demon Gate will also be written off." The demon emperor calmly spoke to Chu Fengmian. Although the inheritance of the 6 demon gates was ancient, it was still not easy for them to rise again in this era. The 6 demon lords of the Six Paths Demon Gates were also rare geniuses in the 9 domains. The battle demon supremacy and the lone demon supremacy had both died at Chu Fengmian's hands. If the human demon supremacy were to die at Chu Fengmian's hands, it would be a huge blow to them. Thus, at that moment, even the demon emperor could only suppress the anger in his heart and discuss with Chu Fengmian. Let bygones be bygones. I don't care. I'm not even afraid of the 7 great sects, so why would I be afraid of a mere Six Paths Demon Gate? Chu Fengmian suddenly laughed when he heard the demon emperor's words. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the demon emperor's face became even gloomier. At this time, Chu Fengmian suddenly changed the topic and opened his mouth. "However, it's not impossible to let him go, but I have a condition." "What conditions?" The demon emperor's eyes turned cold when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. The wealth of the Six Paths Demon Gates was no less than that of the 7 great sections. This condition was acceptable to them. "It's very simple. I'll let him go from the Tianjin sect in exchange for a sword Dao totem." "Naturally, I'll let him go in exchange for a sword Dao totem." Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile. The human demon supremacy is much more useful than that trash from the Tianjin sect. This condition isn't too much, right? That trash from the Tianjin sect didn't have a sword Dao totem. Hearing Chu Fengmian mention this matter again, the Tianjin sect disciples below were furious to the extreme. The Tianjin sect had never suffered such humiliation. They had lost their sword Dao totem, and Song Yao had died at the hands of Chu Fengmian. After such a big loss, the Tianjin sect disciples couldn't wait to bury this secret underground. However, Chu Fengmian mentioned it again and again, which was tantamount to exposing their scars. Sword Dao totem. The demon emperor's eyes flickered with a strange light. He didn't refuse, nor did he answer. He seemed to be thinking. Seeing this, Chu Fengmian was secretly delighted. He only wanted to test the waters. He didn't expect the Six Paths Demon Gates to really have a Sword Dao totem. Except for the 7 Sword Dao totem left in the Tianjin sect, the rest of the Sword Dao totem had disappeared. He didn't know where they were. The Six Paths Demon Gates, as a sect that once stood at the top of the 9 domains, had very likely obtained a Sword Dao totem. Chu Fengyan only wanted to test the waters. Seeing the Demon Emperor's hesitation, Chu Fengyan was right to test him. The Six Paths Demon Gates really did have a Sword Dao totem. After pondering for a while, the Demon Emperor's eyes showed some determination. He seemed to have made a decision. Okay, I'm willing to exchange the Sword Dao totem for the Human Demon Supremacy's life. Release the Human Demon Supremacy, and I'll give you the Sword Dao totem. The Demon Emperor looked at Chu Fengyan and said slowly, "Release him first? Do you think I'm stupid?" Chu Fengyan said with a cold smile. Even the 7 great sects could go back on their word at this time, let alone the Six Paths Demon Gates. Chu Fengyan didn't believe the Demon Emperor's nonsense. He was afraid that the Demon Emperor wouldn't give him the Sword Dao totem even if he released the Human Demon Supremacy. If the Tianjin sect dared to break the contract in public, why wouldn't the Demon Emperor hurry up and give me the Sword Dao totem, and I'll release him? Otherwise, I'll kill him. The blood essence of an emperor is very useful to me. Chu Fengyan suddenly grabbed the Human Demon Supremacy beside him. Immediately, the Human Demon Supremacy's blood essence was drawn out by Chu Fengyan. The Human Demon Supremacy couldn't bear the pain. Screams of agony could be heard from the arena. The Demon Emperor's eyes showed some haze. His original plan had been completely seen through by Chu Fengyan. It seemed that Chu Fengyan wasn't as young as he looked. However, the Human Demon Supremacy couldn't die today. Okay, I'll give you the Sword Dao totem. Let him go. The Demon Emperor waved his hand, and a sword principal totem, which was half the height of a man, was suddenly thrown from below the arena. Chu Fengyan gathered his spiritual energy and grabbed it. With a glance, Chu Fengyan saw that it was a real Sword Dao totem. That's right. It was the 4th-ranked Sword Dao totem. No wonder the Demon Emperor was so reluctant. The 4th-ranked Sword Dao totem was precious enough. There were 19 Sword Dao totem, and the higher the number, the more precious it was. It seemed that the Six Paths Demon Gates only had 1 Sword Dao totem. That was why they were so reluctant to give it to Chu Fengyan. Chapter 976. With Chu Fengyan's current comprehension of the Sword Path, it was not difficult for him to comprehend the Sword Path totem. Moreover, Chu Fengyan had discovered the secret of the Sword Path totem. The unknown swordsmanship might very well represent the true essence of the Sword Path. This also made Chu Fengyan even more obsessed with collecting Sword Path totems. Chu Fengyan did not expect that the Devil Emperor would hand over the Sword Path totem to him so readily. The 4th-rank Sword Path totem was much more precious than the one that the Tianjin sect gave to Chu Fengyan, which was ranked 19th. It was unusual for the Devil Emperor to hand it over so readily. Oh, is that so? Chu Fengyan used his spiritual sense to explore the Sword Path totem. All of a sudden, he sneered. As expected, it was impossible for the Devil Emperor to hand over the Sword Path totem so readily. Chu Fengyan's spiritual sense carefully explored the Sword Path totem and found that there was a drop of dark purple demon blood in the most secretive place of the Sword Path totem. The demon blood was hidden very well. It could be said that only Chu Fengyan's spiritual sense, which was different from that of ordinary people, could detect it. Ordinary rulers and even some supreme ancestors might not be able to discover it if they were not careful. At that time, whoever tried to comprehend the Sword Dao totem would have the drop of demon blood silently enter the warrior's body. If a drop of demon blood entered Chu Fengyan's body, it would be very troublesome for him. Especially if it suddenly erupted, it could be said to be fatal. Obviously, the demon blood had been planted in the Sword Path totem by the Devil Emperor long ago. All of the Devil Emperor's current expressions were actually an act. His real intention was to deal with Chu Fengyan. He sent the Sword Path totem to Chu Fengyan because he wanted to use the demon blood to deal with him. He even wanted to find an opportunity to use the demon blood to control Chu Fengmian. At that time, Chu Fengmian would become the Devil Emperor's slave and be controlled by the demon blood. He would be used by the Devil Emperor for the rest of his life. What a sinister method. Chu Fengmian was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. The Demon Emperor had indeed inherited the inheritance of the Six Paths Demon Gate. He had even inherited all of the Six Paths Demon Gate's vicious moves. If Chu Fengmian hadn't noticed the abnormality of the Devil Emperor, he wouldn't have examined the Sword Dao Totem so carefully. If he wasn't careful, he might really fall into the Devil Emperor's trap. At that time, even if Chu Fengmian had the ability to overturn the heavens, he wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian was cautious enough to resolve the crisis. You dare to plot against me? Very well. I'm afraid that even in your dreams, the Devil Emperor would never have imagined that I would be able to see through everything. Ordinary people wouldn't have any good methods to deal with this devil blood. However, for me, as long as the devil blood hasn't fused into my bloodline, dealing with it is an easy task. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. Since the Devil Emperor wanted to use the devil blood to deal with Chu Fengmian might as well play along and use the devil blood to deal with the Devil Emperor. Chu Fengmian, let him go. The Demon Emperor looked at Chu Fengmian's silence and deliberately pretended to be impatient as he urged. Although he did not believe that Chu Fengmian could see the demonic blood of the Sword Dao Totem, it was extremely dangerous to let Chu Fengmian continue probing. All right, let him go. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a sinister smile. Since you're so heartless, then don't blame me for being unjust. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian sent a palm strike towards the human devil sovereign. The speed at which the human devil sovereign's blood essence was extracted suddenly increased. In an instant, a large amount of blood essence was absorbed by Chu Fengmian. 99% of the human devil sovereign's blood essence was extracted in an instant. The remaining blood essence was only enough to sustain the human devil sovereign's life. Human devil sovereign, I'll return him to you. Chu Fengmian raised the human devil sovereign and threw him out of the stage. The human devil sovereign's body was thrown out of the stage. Several disciples of the Six Paths Devil Gate hastily rushed forward and caught the human devil sovereign, bringing him before the Demon Emperor. 99% of the human devil sovereign's blood essence was extracted by Chu Fengmian. Right now, he was only in the divine force realm. From an emperor, he had fallen to a divine force realm saint. Ruthless, how ruthless. To think that the human demon exalt would end up with his blood essence being extracted. If it wasn't for the Demon Emperor, the human devil sovereign would have already fallen. This Chu Fengmian's character is too arrogant. Could it be that he wants to offend all the sects of the 9 regions? He doesn't even put the 7 great sects in his eyes. Naturally, he won't put the Six Paths Devil Gate in his eyes. With such an arrogant character, I'm afraid he won't be able to go far. Forget it. No matter what, let's not provoke this fierce person. Otherwise, he'll go crazy. The cultivators on the spectator stand shuddered at the sight of the human devil sovereign. Chu Fengmian was truly ruthless. Although he said he would release the human devil sovereign, he still extracted 99% of the human devil sovereign's blood essence. This was no different from crippling the human demon's supremacy. It seemed like Chu Fengmian was truly fearless. Even if it was the Six Paths Devil Gate, Chu Fengmian had no fear. Umph! The Demon Emperor snorted on purpose after checking the human devil sovereign's condition. However, he waved his hand and signaled the disciples of the Six Paths Devil Gate to take the human devil sovereign away. The human devil sovereign could recover after having his blood essence extracted. As long as there were enough resources, he could recover. The Six Paths Devil Gate could afford such resources. Chu Fengmian's figure slowly descended from the arena. Naturally, Chu Fengmian had won this battle. Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, and the others looked at Chu Fengmian with sneers. Chu Fengmian's character was too arrogant. In their opinion, it would have been a win-win situation if they had agreed to the Demon Emperor's request. However, Chu Fengmian had shed all pretense of cordiality with the Six Paths Devil Gate for the sake of the Sword Dao Totem. He had even extracted the human devil sovereign's blood essence. Chu Fengmian and the Six Paths Devil Gate had resolved their irreconcilable enmity. They were all waiting to watch the show. They were looking forward to the next battle, where Chu Fengmian would encounter the Six Paths Devil Gate or even the Demon Emperor. If they fought, they would reap the benefits. Especially when they saw the Demon Emperor walking towards Chu Fengmian. The smiles on their faces deepened. Chu Fengmian, the human devil seed, belongs to the Six Paths Devil Gate. Return it. The Demon Emperor suddenly walked towards Chu Fengmian and extended his hand. Chapter 977. The human demon seed represented the inheritance of the human demon sect of the six demon sects. It could be said that the six demon sects' inheritance was all thanks to the six demon seeds of the six demon sects. It might not be useful to others, but it meant a lot to the six demon sects. Oh, get back to you? I didn't promise you that. I'll give it back to you. Chu Fengmian looked at the Demon Emperor and sneered. You want to exchange it for the human demon seed? I won't go overboard. Give me another sword path totem, and I'll give you the human demon seed. How about that? Another sword path totem? The Demon Emperor's face twitched when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. What did Chu Fengmian take the sword path totem for? The six demon sect had obtained the sword path totem for countless years, and it was now in Chu Fengmian's hands. How could they give him a second sword path totem? You've already obtained a sword path totem. Don't be greedy. The human demon seed is meaningless in your hands. The Demon Emperor looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Obviously, he couldn't agree to Chu Fengmian's request this time. Not to mention the six demon sects. They couldn't give him another sword path totem. Even if they couldn't let Chu Fengmian ask for it at will. Is that so? Then I'll keep the human demon seed for myself. I'll just throw it away when I'm bored. You can look for it in the 9 regions. Maybe you can find it in the stomach of that demonic beast. Chu Fengmian said casually. Get out of the way. The Demon Emperor's face turned green and red at Chu Fengmian's words, but he still stepped aside. Since the Sword Dao totem was already in Chu Fengmian's hands, he wouldn't be able to resist the urge to comprehend it. Once the demonic blood entered his body, it would be the time of his death. There was no need for more conflicts now. With that, the Demon Emperor returned to the six demon sects' seats. Chu Fengmian also returned to his seat and watched the battle in front of him. At this moment, the remaining martial artists were almost all rulers of the Destiny realm. Only Chu Fengmian, the Devil Emperor, and a few other great ancestors could do so. However, whether it was Chu Fengmian or the Devil Emperor, they were all figures in the ruler's land. No martial artist would regard Chu Fengmian as an ordinary ruler. After all, Chu Fengmian was someone who could kill even a supreme realm human demon sovereign. The battles also became more and more intense. Gu Jin had already been defeated. She had entered the top 100 of the 9 regions genius battle. He was one of the few great ancestors of the Barren Ancient sect, and in the end, he was defeated by an emperor of the Barren Ancient sect. The emperor of the Desolate Ancient sect had intended to kill Gu Jin. However, Chu Fengmian had long known about this and had left a trace of spiritual energy on Gu Jin, allowing her to escape unscathed. Once one took the initiative to admit defeat, one's opponent would no longer be able to attack. Gu Jin had already achieved his objective by retreating unscathed. The rest would depend on Chu Fengmian, Mod, Jin Zhanxian, Huang Wu, and the others to see who would win the championship. The battle between the two sovereigns ended quickly. When the next opponent appeared in the ancient fighting arena, the entire place suddenly went into an uproar. Waves of excited voices were heard. Jin Zhanxian of the Tian Jin sect versus Yama Mo of the Six Paths demonic sect. When they saw these two names, the battle that had been silent suddenly boiled over. Finally, it was Jin Zhanxian's turn. Jin Zhanxian's opponent was Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect. Both of them had been looking down on others since the beginning. They had fought their way to this stage with an invincible posture. Kill him. Mod looked at Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect and said coldly. Yes. Yama Mo of the 9 regions demonic sect stepped into the arena. Jin Zhanxian was already waiting. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Without saying anything else, they suddenly attacked. saber light, and sword shadows collided countless times in the arena. Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sex weapon was a long saber. His blade was extremely sharp. With a slash, the surrounding space turned into a blade domain. It was filled with countless saber lights. Jian Zhanxian's sword doubt didn't need any explanation. He was recognized as the best among the younger generation of the Nine Regions' demonic sect. Even in some sword Dao sects, the sword Dao of their ancestors might be inferior to Jian Zhanxian's. However, Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect saber was not inferior to Jian Zhanxian's. The two of them were locked in a fierce battle in the arena. What a mysterious saber technique. How can Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect saber technique be so amazing? Look, isn't this the saber technique of the legendary saber saint? The cultivators in the stands looked at Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect. When they saw Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect saber technique, they suddenly exclaimed. The saber saint had once stood at the peak of the Nine Regions' demonic sect. However, it was said that the saber saint's saber technique had not been passed down. About 10,000 years ago, the Nine Regions' demonic sect saber technique had been lost. They didn't expect Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect's saber technique to reappear. The descendant of a saber saint. Yama Mo of the saber saint is actually a descendant of a saber saint. I didn't expect the descendant of the saber saint to have joined the Six Paths demonic sect. Countless voices of discussion were filled with excitement. Sure enough, there were surprises in every Nine Regions Genius Tournament. This time, the descendant of a saber saint, who had disappeared for 10,000 years, had actually reappeared. This saber technique is indeed amazing. Chu Fengyan nodded inwardly when he saw Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect's saber technique. Chu Fengyan didn't understand saber techniques, but sabers and swords had one thing in common: their sharpness. Judging from the sharpness of Yama Mo's saber technique, Chu Fengyan knew that Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect saber technique had reached the peak of perfection. Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect saber technique was many times more powerful than any of the geniuses Chu Fengyan had ever seen. However, his opponent, Jian Zhanxian, was much more terrifying than Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect saber technique. Chu Fengyan could clearly sense that Jian Zhanxian hadn't used his full strength yet. Demonic saber descends. After countless stalemates, Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect made the first move and revealed his true strength. The blade in his hand suddenly rose steadily and reached a length of tens of thousands of feet. When the blade fell, there was no way for his opponent to escape. He finally couldn't hold it in any longer. I didn't expect Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect to possess such terrifying strength. The Six Paths demonic sect strength is indeed terrifying. Many cultivators sighed inwardly when they saw Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect and Jian Zhanxian locked in battle. This was the first time Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect had participated in a competition. He was younger than Jian Zhanxian, yet he was already so powerful. If he was given twice the time, perhaps even Jian Zhanxian wouldn't be his match. It was indeed amazing. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw that Yama Mo of the Nine Regions' demonic sect wasn't defending. Chapter 978. The atmosphere in the crowd became more and more solemn as they looked at the arena without any expectations. It had been 30 years since Jian Zhanxian last made a move. In these 30 years, no one could imagine how strong Jian Zhanxian had become. Limitless heavenly sword. Jian Zhanxian spat out these words coldly. The sword in his hand suddenly moved. He struck out with his sword, and shadows filled the sky. It was as if there was an illusory figure rushing down with a spiritual sword in his hand, slashing and slashing. The sword had the power to break heaven and earth. Some weaker warriors could not even see this illusory figure clearly. Only some sovereigns could see it slightly. This illusory figure was actually Jian Zhanxian, and Jian Zhanxian, who was standing in the same place, was just an illusory figure that had yet to disappear. The moment Jian Zhanxian's body came in front of the blade, his sword soared into the sky and pierced the clouds. It seemed like an ordinary sword, but it pierced the clouds. The blade that Yama's supremacy had struck out was split open by the sword from the heart. Then, the sword light sprinted for a full 10,000 feet. Under the sword, Yama's supremacy's blade was completely shattered. I admit defeat. Seeing this scene, Yama's supremacy hurriedly shouted. A wave of spiritual energy appeared from the ancient fighting arena, directly ending the battle between the two. Jian Zhanxian had won. This result did not seem to have much suspense. Most of the warriors present had guessed that Jian Zhanxian would win. However, the result of a single sword victory was indeed somewhat unexpected. Yama's supremacy's strength was already extremely shocking, but he did not expect that he would still be unable to withstand a single move from Jian Zhanxian. Sword-slaying a mortal's current strength was much stronger than 30 years ago. It had already undergone an earth-shattering change. Yama's supremacy's taking the initiative to admit defeat was actually the best choice. As a saber cultivator, once his blade was broken, he did not have much fighting ability. If he continued to fight with Jian Zhanxian, he was already close to death. If he took the initiative to admit defeat, he could still save his life. When High Lord Yama stepped down, the Devil Emperor did not say anything. He only nodded. The strength that Jian Zhanxian had displayed was indeed not something that the current Hell Demon Supremacy could deal with. Jian Zhanxian's true enemy should be the Devil Emperor. However, when Jian Zhanxian stepped off the stage, he deliberately glanced at Chu Fengyan with a provocative look in his eyes. It seemed that Jian Zhanxian was still brooding over the fact that Chu Fengyan had stolen the Kendo totem from the Tianjin sect. Now, he was looking forward to drawing Chu Fengyan so that he could kill him in the arena. Despite Jian Zhanxian's provocation, Chu Fengyan's expression remained as calm as ever. At this time, most of the cultivators were still observing the battles in the arena, calculating their next opponent. Chu Fengyan was extremely calm. Chu Fengyan's goal wasn't to enter the top 10. His goal was to be number one in the 9 regions genius battle. Other than being number 1, Chu Fengyan didn't need to compete for anything else. If he wanted to be number 1, he naturally had to defeat all the other powerhouses. Instead of scheming, it was better to rely on his own strength. As long as he was strong enough, all schemes would be meaningless. Chu Fengyan sat on the ground and slowly took out the Kendo totem that he had just obtained from the Devil Emperor. Chu Fengyan slowly closed his eyes and began to comprehend the Kendo totem with his spiritual consciousness. His spiritual consciousness merged with the Kendo totem. Good. This kid really can't help but comprehend the Kendo totem. It seems that he really wants to be number 1. That's why he's in such a hurry to increase his strength. The Devil Emperor's eyes turned cold as he watched Chu Fengyan begin to comprehend the Kendo totem. Since Chu Fengyan had chosen to comprehend the Kendo totem, it meant that he hadn't seen the demon blood hidden in the Kendo totem. The Devil Emperor took advantage of this time to inject the demon blood into Chu Fengyan's body. When he fought with Chu Fengyan, this drop of demon blood would be enough to erupt with earth-shattering power and reverse the situation. The Devil Emperor had quietly controlled the demon blood in the Kendo totem and slowly injected it into Chu Fengyan's body. Chu Fengyan sat on the ground. He had seen all of the Devil Emperor's actions. Chu Fengyan was just pretending to comprehend the Kendo totem. In fact, he was waiting for the Devil Emperor to start transferring the demon blood from the Kendo totem to Chu Fengyan. This drop of demon blood gradually moved from the Kendo totem to Chu Fengyan's body. It wanted to directly drill into Chu Fengyan's spirit meridian. However, all of a sudden, a surge of spiritual energy appeared and wrapped around the drop of demonic blood. It was the power of creation. This demon blood wasn't ordinary demon blood. It was the purgatory demon blood that had been specially refined. It was said that nothing could dissolve it. However, in front of the power of creation, there was nothing that couldn't be used. The purgatory demon blood was the same. It was wrapped up by the power of creation and then integrated into the spirit meridian. Now that the demon blood was destroyed, the Devil Emperor would definitely know. Chu Fengmian didn't want to act rashly and alert the enemy. He wanted to leave a surprise for the Devil Emperor. The power of creation surrounded the demon blood and entered the spirit meridian. The Devil Emperor could only feel that the demon blood seemed to have entered Chu Fengmian's spirit meridian. As long as he controlled it, the demon blood would act up and completely control Chu Fengmian. After doing all this, the Devil Emperor's face revealed a somewhat sinister smile. Chu Fengmian had killed 2 supremacies of the Six-Path Demon sect in a row. How could the Devil Emperor let Chu Fengmian go? However, the Devil Emperor didn't know that as long as Chu Fengmian was willing, the power of creation could directly eliminate the demon blood. The demon blood could be eliminated. This sword principle totem did not pose any danger to him. Chu Fengmian then started to activate his spiritual consciousness and comprehend the Kendo totem. The number of swordsmanship recorded in this Kendo totem was 10 times more than that of the previous Kendo totem. If he wanted to comprehend it, it would be more difficult to understand. Originally, Chu Fengmian would need a lot of effort to comprehend it. However, when Chu Fengmian comprehended the unknown swordsmanship, he seemed to have vaguely reached a new level of understanding of swordsmanship. This obscure swordsmanship was seen through by Chu Fengmian at a glance. In just 2 hours, Chu Fengmian had learned more than half of the swordsmanship in this Kendo totem. He only needed to practice it over and over again to integrate it into the 9-region swordsmanship. This speed was simply beyond Chu Fengmian's imagination. Chapter 979. Although the unknown swordsmanship was incomplete, the benefits it brought to Chu Fengmian were incomparable. Chu Fengmian originally needed at least a few days to fully comprehend the sword principle totem. Now he only needed 2 hours to do it. This meant that Chu Fengmian's understanding of swordsmanship had undergone earth-shaking changes. The ancient swordsmanship recorded in the sword principle totem was not what Chu Fengmian was looking forward to the most. What Chu Fengmian was looking forward to the most was the incomplete swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian also wanted to see if there was any incomplete swordsmanship in this sword principle totem. This was what Chu Fengmian was looking forward to the most. Chu Fengmian closed his eyes tightly and carefully explored every corner of this sword principle totem. Chu Fengmian had just discovered this unknown swordsmanship after careful exploration for a long time. Another 6 hours passed. Finally, Chu Fengmian found some traces. Then he found another incomplete swordsmanship in this sword principle totem. It was the same as the unknown swordsmanship that Chu Fengmian had obtained before. They belonged to the same swordsmanship. Sure enough, my guess is right. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed. For Chu Fengmian, this unknown swordsmanship was the most important thing. He had previously guessed that this unknown swordsmanship was in the sword principle totem. Now he also found this unknown swordsmanship in this sword principle totem. This confirmed Chu Fengmian's guess. This unknown swordsmanship was indeed hidden in the sword principle totem. Chu Fengmian also found this unknown swordsmanship in the sword principle totem that ranked 4th. It was also an incomplete part. However, to Chu Fengmian's great joy, this unknown swordsmanship was actually connected with the part that Chu Fengmian had obtained before. It was enough to complete this part of the unknown swordsmanship. Although only a small part of it was completed, it brought Chu Fengmian a great harvest. Just this part of the swordsmanship was enough to make Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship reach a new and incredible level. Chu Fengmian felt that his 9 regions swordsmanship had begun to change. Although the swordsmanship was incomplete, it was much more profound than any swordsmanship Chu Fengmian had ever seen. Just by comprehending the swordsmanship, Chu Fengmian suddenly felt that his strength was rising and was about to reach a bottleneck. He was only 1 step away from the 6th step of the life and death steps. Chu Fengmian had comprehended countless sword techniques, but he had never reached such a level. Now that he had comprehended the remnant of an unknown sword technique, Chu Fengmian almost made a breakthrough in his realm. Chu Fengmian's improvement in his realm was not the greatest benefit. He could feel that his understanding of swordsmanship had improved by leaps and bounds. If Chu Fengmian were to comprehend the sword principle totem now, Chu Fengmian might be able to comprehend all the swordsmanship in the sword principal totem in less than 10 minutes. This kid's swordsmanship seems to have made a breakthrough again. The martial artists at the edge of the arena all looked at Chu Fengmian and thought to themselves. After Chu Fengmian comprehended the sword principal totem, everyone could clearly feel that Chu Fengmian's strength had reached a higher level than before. Many experts of the 7 great sects looked at Chu Fengmian and made up their minds. If they encountered Chu Fengmian, they had to kill him. They couldn't give him the slightest chance. Only Demon Emperor sneered when he saw Chu Fengmian's strength increase. The stronger Chu Fengmian was, the better it was for him. His demon blood had already merged with Chu Fengmian's body. He just had to wait for Chu Fengmian to be forced into a desperate situation. Then, he would be able to urge the demon blood to occupy Chu Fengmian's body. At that time, Chu Fengmian could only become his slave and work for him. The stronger Chu Fengmian was, the better it was for Demon Emperor. The battle continued. There were only a dozen martial artists left in this year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes and saw Demon Emperor fighting with the young master of the Sage Monarch sect, Wu Hongtian. With Wu Hongtian's strength, he was a hot favorite to win this year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Since the Sage Monarch sect was not active in the region, Wu Hongtian's reputation was not great. However, as the young master of the Sage Monarch sect, the martial artists in the stands knew that such a person was not weak. At the very least, he was someone who was on par with Jian Zhanxian and Desolate Void. Therefore, everyone was looking forward to this battle. Demon Emperor, you betrayed the 7 great sects and killed many of our disciples. Today, I will represent the 7 great sects to kill you, you demon. Wu Hongtian looked at Chu Fengmian and roared furiously. Along with his anger, Wu Hongtian's body began to swell crazily as he activated his martial god true body. Facing Demon Emperor, Wu Hongtian naturally did not hold back. The moment the martial god true body was formed, Wu Hongtian's true strength was displayed. Zenith Realm. Wu Hongtian's cultivation realm had reached the Zenith Realm. With the support of the martial god true body, his strength was almost invincible, except for old ancestor Wu Xuan. When Wu Hongtian's martial god true body appeared, he immediately gathered the strength of a punch and blasted it towards Demon Emperor. On the other hand, Mo Di watched everything with cold eyes. He waited until Wu Hongtian made his move before he slowly made his move. Endless demonic intent was emitted from his body and surrounded Demon Emperor. The demonic intent turned into ancient demonic gods. They looked fierce and evil, but they all submitted to Demon Emperor. It was as if Demon Emperor was the real emperor of demons. Wu Hongtian's punch was blocked by an ancient demonic god. It cannot even get close to Demon Emperor. This demonic intent is really terrifying. The ancient demonic gods formed by the demonic intent are comparable to the Zenith Realm. Chu Fengmian was shocked when he saw Demon Emperor make his move. The last time he fought with Chu Fengmian, Demon Emperor's strength was many times stronger. His demonic will was enough to stand on equal footing with a Paramount Heaven Stage expert. Moreover, Chu Fengmian could vaguely see that Demon Emperor was only a clone that was not inferior to his strength. It was exactly the same as when he fought with Chu Fengmian in Heavenly Feather Deity Domain. Demon Emperor's true body was hidden somewhere. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.